What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Welcome to the Tuesday show, gang. Little MLB DFS Lineup Card Live. I always forget to say the actual technical name of the show, which I guess is what it is. It's always been on the tweets. It's wild hair sticking out. I desperately need a haircut. Under this hat, it's just a total mess. But it's on all the tweets, the Lineup Card Live name. I got to start using it a little bit more. So welcome to the Lineup Card Live show. We're going to run through a gigantic 12-game MLB DFS slate for DraftKings and FanDuel. Looks like a really good one lined up. Ton of pitching available. Deep pitching slate. A lot of stuff up top. But we'll get into it. We'll go through all of it. Larry C. in the chat messing with me already. What's my top 10 movies? Like I could break that down. I have such a problem with favorites. I've talked about it before. We would have to get into categorizing different things, and I could do like a top 10 for each different genre of movie, maybe, and then there would be some fudging back and forth with where do I put Jaws, where do I put this, but there is a top 10, and then it's top 5 are never going to be in the same order, but will be pretty consistent. But then the bottom 5 would probably be on a pretty rotating basis of just, what I'm in the mood to say or what I remember to say. But I'm really bad with favorites, Larry. Jaws is up there. Ghostbusters is up there. The original Godfather, you can't argue with Godfather 1 and 2 being in the top 5. So there's 2 that, it's so annoying. I know you were joking, Larry, but now we're getting into it. I mean, come on. We got to start the show somewhere. One day I'll do the list. The beginning of the baseball season, I banged out a list of 20 good baseball movies for you guys. Not sure if anybody followed up on that homework. Let's say hi to everybody, though. Lara obviously is here. Lone Wolf's here. Travis Wyndham is here. Anthony Taylor. Congrats to Anthony. Took down put in 2 bullets in the 25-cent tournament on FanDuel and took it down. I think he won $500 is what he said. Pretty awesome. I think it was a Toronto stack, sounded like. I know he was excited about Justin Turner and the early start there, and Vladdy getting things going a little bit. So congrats there. And also a belated congrats. We're working out the withdrawals, apparently, with a couple questions from the folks over at FanDuel. But a belated congrats to our guy Woody. Took down a basketball tournament the other day. I think it was a basketball tournament. Yeah, Woody popped a 15K. Woody C. Popped a 15K basketball tournament the other day. So congrats to Woody as well. Best of luck explaining to FanDuel your multi-state adventures that I know they're asking you questions about, buddy. But I'm confident that that's going to get all worked out, and Woody's going to have a nice little payday there. See what else is going on in the chat. We've got Mamba's here, Carlos Soto's here, Fanatic is here, Larry C, Andrew's here. What's up, Andrew? Dimitri's here. What's up, gang? Looks like a good GPP day of baseball. Excited for the breakdown. Thank you, buddy. And I agree, it does look like a very fun-looking day. Jake Swale, Sandy Melman. Let's get into this thing before I just ramble on and on for too long. Good chunk of people here already. More to come. Diving right in. Big board. We can see only the one team as of the last time I punched this up over 5 runs. That's the Houston Astros going up against Carlos Carrasco. It's an interesting spot. Astros are the top of the board today on the top stacks tool. We've got the Dodgers at a 4.8. Pretty solid looking, but they're facing Jordan Montgomery. We talked a little bit yesterday about how the Dodgers are still good against left-handed pitching. No real issues there, but it is a little bit of a potential ding to the top side of the Dodgers. They still rank out, I think, 4th. If I was doing it by the straight point averages, they would just be the top stack anyway today. And I forget whether it was Braves Dodgers or Dodgers Braves if you're just doing it on the raw point averages. But as we've discussed, that's not exactly how I'm doing it. I'm trying to provide an actual little bit of insight in there and re-rank them. So the Dodgers and the Braves down the board a little bit. Braves in a similar situation to yesterday. Just a 7-run total in that game out in Seattle. They're facing Luis Castillo today. A 3.66 implied total for the Atlanta Braves is not something we see very often. Ronaldo Lopez on the other side of that game, keeping the Mariners down at 3.42. So very low scoring expected in that one. The Braves could get to Castillo, though. It's still the Atlanta Braves. So that's why I'm saying it's, they still project out strong, even with Castillo on the mound, just because of who they are. But when I'm ranking it out, I try and adjust for that. Top of the board here, KC at the Blue Jays, 7.5 run total there, 3.56 for the KC side, 4.02 for Toronto. Cole Ragans going for Kansas City, Jose Barrios going for Toronto. Interesting pitching matchup. I like Ragans. He's projecting out really well in the model. Didn't have a great start. Didn't have a bad start, but didn't have a great start against this Blue Jays team in his last one. Cubbies in the Mets. Javier Assad on the mound for the Cubs. Really like him. 3.41 implied total for the Cubbies. 3.67 implied total for the Mets. The Giants and the Red Sox. 4.26 implied total for the Giants. Just 3.83 for the Red Sox at home. Logan Webb going for the Giants. One of the best pitchers in baseball. Very, very good at limiting power, holding opposing teams in check for any kind of offensive production and any kind of DFS scoring. So interesting spot there in Boston. Minnesota and the White Sox. Twins, one of the top teams on the board as well. I believe they were second on the Stacks ranking when I finished it. 4.85 implied total there, going up against Michael Soroka. On the other side of that one, the White Sox just drawing a 3.75 implied total. The Rays and the Brewers. Rays going up against Freddie Peralta. Brewers drawing some interesting power projections in the model today. 4.30 implied total for Milwaukee. The Rays coming in at just 3.29. Freddie, top projected overall pitcher on the day, but very, very expensive. The Nationals and the Rangers. John Gray is interesting in this game. Projects out very well for not that high a price. Pitching really well. And actually on full rest this time. We worried about that a little bit last time out. He's got Washington just at a 3.73. On the other side, Texas going up against Mackenzie Gore, a talented pitcher. It's got him in check a little bit for where Texas can get up to. 4.36 implied total for the Rangers. The Guardians and the Astros. Guardians going up against Hunter Brown, 4.01 implied total. And then, as mentioned, the Astros leading the day at 5.10 against Carlos Carrasco. Ton of quality in that Astros lineup. Loperfido just got called up, so I'm expecting him to be in the lineup at the bottom of the lineup. We'll see how it looks. Believe he's min-priced on FanDuel, and at last check was not on the DraftKings slate. Not sure if they added him yet. Somebody let me know, actually, so that I can reload the DraftKings salaries if he is. I won't do it for the show, but for the projections table, I will. Where were we? Phillies and the Angels. Spencer Turnbull on the mound for Philadelphia. Love Turnbull. I think he's very, very affordable for his talent and a very good matchup here. 3.97 implied total for the Angels. 4.63 on the Philly side. Another good spot for potential from Philly bats. Dodgers and the Diamondbacks, I talked about it before. Both teams at a healthy total. The Diamondbacks drawing Landon Knack on the mound for the Dodgers, but go me. I'm going to pat myself on the back for the short-term memory on some of these pitching matchups, by the way. Especially because I didn't write the article today. So 4.79 implied total on the Diamondback side. Pittsburgh and Oakland, low-end game, 3.76 on the Pittsburgh side, 3.31 on the Oakland side. Cincinnati and San Diego, 3.33 on the implied run total for Cincinnati. Facing you, Darvish. Darvish coming back from the IL, had a neck strain or neck soreness or whatever it was. Kind of concerned about Darvish's depth and kind of concerned about just the form that he's been in so far this year. So I'm not sure that Cincinnati belongs that low on the board in terms of the implied runs. That seems generous on the pitching side. So maybe they're a little bit more interesting, and maybe we don't get to that much Darvish. And then San Diego, 4.27 implied total. And then that that low total Braves Mariners game. Again, the Braves could always bust loose against any pitcher in baseball, even Luis Castillo. The Mariners have been pretty low end. They should feed Reynaldo Lopez strikeouts. I keep waiting for him to turn back into a pumpkin, but he's been succeeding and he's been looking dynamite and projects out really well against that heavy strikeout Mariners team. So it's going to be an interesting slate. A lot to work with on the mound. Let me resort by DK. So just looking at some of these prices, we've got some interesting guys above the bargain bin, but like good pitchers at a discount. One is Cole Ragans at 7,800, just thinking about DraftKings to start us off here. Mitch Keller at 88, honestly, I don't mind at all. One of the top projections on the board going up against Oakland. He's got them at a very low total. We know that Mitch can be very hit and miss, but when he's on, and this is a very good spot for him to find to pitch well, that's an interesting price for him. Logan Webb at 8,300 is just silly. I get that. Actually, I don't even get it. Boston's not that good. I don't understand why Logan Webb is that cheap on DraftKings. That's probably your best value of the day, honestly, on DraftKings. Take Webb and pair him with Peralta, and there you go. Or take him and pair him with Castillo even against the Braves at 86. That feels low as well. I really like Turnbull, but the fact that Turnbull's at 91 while Logan Webb is at 83, that feels weird. Ronaldo, 95 on DraftKings is perfectly fair. 10-8 feels a little high on FanDuel, but again, there are just so many strikeouts in that Seattle lineup that I think we can exploit that spot again. And then this one I really like on both sides. 7,800 for John Gray. If you need a discount pitcher on FanDuel, 78 for Gray going up against this national squad. He projects out really well. He's pitching in good form. And then 73, that's just above what 7,000 and below is generally like what I refer to as the bargain bin, but close enough for a good pitcher against a mediocre team. That's not a bad spot at 7,300. Barrios is fine at 10,089. I greatly prefer it on DraftKings for 89. The 10,000 is a little high for a pitcher that I don't consider a top-end talent. I think he's a little bit above league average in most of his starts, as we've talked about a number of times, but does spike upside starts from time to time. Sean Manaea at 76 could succeed, like it better at cheaper on FanDuel, but in the mix for like mid-range value shares at 8,000. Assad, I like the talent. He's been pitching really well, 8,800, 8,400, perfectly fair. Another one, just like both of these guys are just kind of in the mix. Montgomery, just don't like the matchup. I do like the pitcher. I like the depth that he's provided in his first two starts. 8,700 is a very fair price for the talent. It's just on such a big pitching slate. Why would you really want to tangle with the Dodgers? And 8,700 is not like you're getting a big discount to do it. He's discounted a little. He should be a $9,000 pitcher on both sides, but it's not an extreme discount. Darvish, again, I have questions about the potential for depth. Simeon Woods Richardson, potentially interesting against that White Sox team. They've burnt us a couple times with a couple of runs here and there. Had two big games over the weekend against the Rays pitching. And then Joe Ryan didn't really pitch like overly poorly in terms of runs yesterday. He just didn't strike anybody out. It was a weird game for Ryan. Gave up some hits, didn't strike anybody out. Really big disappointment in that one. Woods Richardson doesn't project anywhere near the top of the board like we had Joe Ryan, but for 7,000 for his talent level against that White Sox team, I do think he's easily on the board on DraftKings. And if you're building a bunch of lineups on FanDuel, definitely in the mix. Projects out, around these guys. Hunter Brown against Cleveland. The price is fair at 6,800. Kind of a mixed bag of results so far. I just don't like really throwing a pitcher like that against that Cleveland team with all their hit tool ability and their station-to-station approach. Could be a game where they do their Guardians thing. We've also got a couple hitters in that lineup showing some power against. So I don't really love the Hunter Brown spot. I do think Mackenzie Gore could succeed against the Rangers. 8,000, 8,100. Doesn't project great because it's the Rangers on the other side, but he is a talented pitcher. It's just another one of those spots, kind of like Jordan Montgomery. Like, why do I want to draw down against the Rangers on a slate like this? It just doesn't really make sense. Nick Martinez, 7,164. Again, perfectly fairly priced. It's okay. I wouldn't take him completely off the board, but he's not anybody I'm prioritizing for value. At 64, he does work into that bargain bin area, though. Landon Knack against Arizona, I think they're too good, and he's too high priced for that spot. We'll look at it in a little bit more detail. Alex Wood, maybe a dart throw against Pittsburgh, but probably not even at price. Soroka, I really prefer the Twin side of that matchup. Carrasco, I greatly prefer the Houston side of that. Tyler Alexander, I prefer the Milwaukee side. He's at 6,000 on DraftKings. Maybe, these are the guys that you're just rolling dice with for the low price. I do think Martinez has a little bit more meat on the bone. Hunter Brown maybe has a little bit more on the bone. And then 7,000 and 7,300. Like, these are the guys that I would be strongly considering. And then, of course, 78 for Cole Ragans, 83 for Logan Webb. Tyler Anderson against Philly. We're seeing a lot of offense from Philly, and Cooper Criswell not showing us anything at the bottom of the board. Yeah, Greg Freed was crazy high owned on FanDuel last night. He was in the 40% in the big tournaments, in like the cheapo, like $3, $15, thousands of entries tournaments. So he was super popular. That was just a broken price. It didn't make any sense to have him priced that low. Succeeded, wasn't the top guy on the board, but overall I thought we had a pretty decent day outside of Joe Ryan underperforming. Thought we had a pretty decent day with some of the pitching projections, some of the reads. But yeah, that ownership was way, way high. And that entire the lineup that I had in was as I told you guys on the show, it was a Phillies stack with forget with Freed, and even the lineup that I played, like straight just down the lineup on what was it, a 9-game slate, was duped numerous times. It was just a really popular build. It turned out. Philly was under projected for ownership where I was getting ownership, and so was the other team that I used. So, yeah, I was disappointed with how popular the plays that I got to were, but it worked out. It cashed. It didn't win, but it was an okay lineup. But, yeah, it had just super, super chalky plays. Going to try and be a little bit more creative than that today. We'll see. Edward B. is here. Eddie from Burgon, North Carolina. What's going on, Ed? Good to see you. There's Woody. What's going on, Woody? Congrats again, buddy. I don't know if you were here before, but congrats again on that takedown. Promise, you'll get that. You'll get that cash someday. Kansas City going up against the Blue Jays. So Cole Ragans, interesting spot. Again, he just faced this Blue Jays team last week on the 25th, last Thursday. 5 innings pitched, gave up 3 hits, 1 earned run. Wasn't a bad start. Walked 3, only struck out 4. It's not really what we're looking for from Cole Ragans. But even if we get that at 7,800, I think that's your downside most of the times you roll this start, with a pretty aggressively high upside. The Blue Jays are a low strikeout team. You can see 17.7% for the projected lineup, including all of their best players, underperformance aside, all of their best players. 20.5% is the high water mark on the bad side for Vladdy. Everybody else in the mid-teens. So it's a very good team at avoiding strikeouts, but Ragans is exceptionally talented at finding strikeouts. 27.8% strikeout rate, 14.6% swinging strike rate. Stuff Plus really likes the makeup of his arsenal. Doesn't really give up much power, so we're not that concerned about home runs. Of course, he could give up 1, 2, couple of home runs. Guy like Justin Turner's on fire, hit 2 last night. Maybe Vladdy coming around with the bat a little bit. So he's not invulnerable to power, but he hasn't given up many this year. He's given up 1 all season and none in his last 5 starts. 7th start of the year for Ragans, and the numbers all look pretty on point. 3.90 ERA, but a 3.22 xFIP, so pitching a little bit better under the covers. The whip is a little bit high. I don't have his BABIP in front of me, but I would imagine the BABIP allowed is a little bit high to go with that. But a very high-end pitcher for the money on DraftKings. And at 9,200, he feels a little bit underpriced to me on the FanDuel slate as well. So I think we fire away with Ragans. On the other side, Jose Berrios, like I said, 19.4% strikeout rate. We're charging $10,000 for him against the Kansas City Royals, who are an up-and-down club, sure, but certainly capable of getting to a pitcher like that. At 89 on DraftKings, it's more fair. That looks about right. But Berrios is not a top-end pitcher. He never was. 23.5% over 189 and 2/3 last year, 3.65 ERA, but a 4.01 xFIP. Year before, 19.8% strikeouts, right around where he is this year. Walk 6%, 5.23 ERA with a 4.21 xFIP over 172 innings in 32 starts. He had a mid-20s strikeout rate. I think it was 26 something a couple years back from that, but that was an outlier year. On his career trajectory, everything has been more just a bump above league average. But capable of, again, spiking a big game. We've seen it a bunch of times. He does have the ability to pitch like an ace on the right day. It's just the average day from Berrios is not over the top great. He projects out fine. I think he's totally playable on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I have a real problem with it at 10,000. I think he should be here or lower. He's certainly not a better pitcher than Ragans. Not for DFS anyway. If we're looking at these stacks... Oh, and by the way, the recent form for Berrios against this same Royals team just last week on the same day. This is a repeat matchup. He also worked 5 that day. He gave up 2 runs on 3 hits, including a home run. He walked 3, and he only struck out 1. A couple decent games before that. 6 strikeouts against the Padres, 7 strikeouts against the low-end Rockies over 7 innings. Certainly pitches deep into games, so you've got the shot at the quality start basically every time out. He only worked 5 in that last one against Kansas City. Every other game he went at least 6. So you do get that bonus from him. He's got a few wins in here. They've been good for him. I just don't really see it at 10,000 on FanDuel. I think you're basically, if you're going for it on FanDuel at that price, you're basically bonus chasing, right? We're just kind of looking for the extra points he's gotten from the win bonuses and the quality start bonuses, which is no guarantee. So feels a little thin at the FanDuel price. DraftKings, especially with the the idea of maybe a win backing it up, but I don't love their chances against Dragons. Leading us into the stacks there, the Blue Jays are still very underpriced. Mini breakout last night. Again, Justin Turner, 2 home runs. Vladdy, good game. Bo Bichette didn't start. I forget whether or not he ended up pinch hitting or anything. But 4,700, 2,900 is exceptionally cheap for a player like Bo Bichette. He's mired at 210, 263, 305, 35% worse than average creating runs so far this year. But we know that he's a fantastic baseball player. 29% better than average for run creation 2 years ago, 25% last year, 290, 333, 469, 24 homers, 13 steals. Next year, 306, 339, 475, 20, and 5. He's a tremendous player and a good investment at shortstop if you're rostering Blue Jays. Vladdy at 4,900, 2,900, too cheap. Leads the team at 6.71 in the home run model, but again, Ragan's no real problems with power against, so maybe not the best spot to be home run hunting. George Springer, 5.55 in the home run model. He's got 3 on the year, 3 stolen bases. Vladdy's got 3 home runs, no stolen bases. 91 WRC plus and a 105 WRC plus. These guys are gonna turn the corner. And when they do, if the bottom of the lineup keeps on doing what they're doing, this team actually might be okay. Davis Schneider's been decent over his 70 plate appearances, creating runs 34% better than average. He's got a 213 ISO, getting on base at a 343 clip. He's hit 3 home runs. Part-time infielder with outfield eligibility. Ernie Clement, third base only, 3,000. Triple position eligibility for 2,400. Looks a little bit better on the FanDuel slate. 275, 283, 451. The on base isn't there, but he's hit for a little bit of pop. He's stolen a couple bases when he's got on. He's got a 107 WRC plus over 54 plate appearances. Varsho's hit 6 home runs. He's got a 267 ISO, 137 WRC plus, and the contact profile is oddly just right where it normally is. Mid sevens, 37.5%. Doesn't really make premium contact, but does hit for a decent amount of power on the right day. 102 plate appearances. It's not a bad return for the money for the cheap salary. Alejandro Kirk, we prefer Danny Jansen when he's catching. A little bit more power there, a little bit more realistic production. IKF is defense first kind of a player. He's hitting 253, 314, 354, but creating runs at a 4% below average clip. 1 home run, 2 stolen bases. Not a great spot in the lineup. He's very cheap with quadruple position eligibility, so if you're building a bunch of Blue Jay stacks, he's at worst like a building block that can, a little Swiss Army knife kind of a play that can make things work financially, but that's really all he is. Slap hitting, 3.1% barrels, 25% hard hits. Not a lot more in terms of premium contact or power. 38.9% hard hits was decent, but everything else kind of limited. On the Royals side, Sal Perez didn't start yesterday, came out of the lineup with back tightness, but then ended up pinch hitting. So we'll see whether or not we get Sal in the starting lineup today. Would be a downgrade for sure if they don't have him. And they've been in a little bit of a downswing. But 4 home runs apiece at the top of the lineup for Michael Garcia, Bobby Witt, Vinny Pasquantino. You've also got speed from Garcia and Bobby Witt. Garcia's gradually pulling the batting average up. He's up to 231. The on base still at 281. Makes him shaky for the leadoff spot. 13% worse than average creating runs in that spot. But doesn't really strike out much, just an 18% strikeout rate, and makes very good contact, 9.4% barrels, 46.9% hard hits. Witt is tremendous for contact. These have gone up in a small sample of batted ball events so far. He's got 4 home runs, 9 steals. He's created runs 47% better than average. Vinny is at 206, 313, 381, but this is going to change. This is going to go up. So is the on base if he just continues doing Vinny Pasquantino things. He draws too many walks and makes too much good contact for that to stay that low. A lot of atom balls out of Vinny Pasquantino, right? Hit right at the player. 98 WRC plus. We're not far off from a lot of production from Vinny. Perez has been one of the best players in baseball to start the season. 80% better than average for run creation at 250 ISO. He's got 7 home runs, slashing 346, 404, 596. Tremendous play at catcher on any given slate when he's in there. I think you could one-off him pretty effectively at catcher on DraftKings for 4,800. easy enough to play at first base if that's where you want to stick him instead, if you're opting not to play Vinny in a stack. Michael Massey for just 2,900, 2,200 across sites has done nothing this year, but makes decent contact at the plate from the left side. A little bit of upside. Love the pricing, especially if he's hitting here in the lineup. MJ Melendez, still like him a lot. Still making very good contact overall. Striking out a little bit at 23.2%. He's dipped down to 186, 263, 384, which is problematic. He's down to a 78 WRC plus, but there is a lot of good left-handed power upside from MJ. Same thing from Nelson Velasquez. He had a better game yesterday. 226, 301, 357 overall, 2 home runs, a stolen base, but we know there's a lot of power looking there from the right side of the plate. They're down to 3,900 and 4,000 across sites, 27 or on DraftKings rather, 2,700 and 2,600 on FanDuel. Hunter Renfroe has been a disaster so far this year. If he's in the lineup, he's a mix-in at best for the low price of $3,000, $2,300. He's got 2 home runs, hit 80 over the past 3 years, but has, again, nothing at all this year. Kyle Isbell, I think he had a decent game yesterday, if I remember correctly. 225, 262, 388, 3 homers, 3 steals, 20% worse than average for run creation over 85 plate appearances, but another guy very cheap. Potentially, maybe you could get away with wrapping him around. Not like he's a productive hitter overall, though. 240, 282 last year over 313 plate appearances, 211, 264 over 278 the year before. So we're not talking about somebody who's overly reliable at getting on base, creating runs, being on base to steal bases. A little bit of happenstance in the production so far this year. Raggins is definitely a yes. Very enthusiastic yes at the low DraftKings price. 7,800 is way too cheap for this pitcher. Even if it doesn't succeed, it makes sense to play it. 9,200 is a perfectly fine price on FanDuel. Barrios in the mix at 8,900, but no real enthusiasm for it. You could definitely get there with him on DraftKings. At 10,000, like I said, I think you're just chasing win and quality start bonuses, which he does have a good shot at getting to. Typically does work deep into games. 36 and 2/3 pitched in just 6 games. So you're looking at 6 innings. But that is a big price to pay. And if he gives up a few runs on the way to that quality start, if he gives up 3 runs, doesn't really generate that many strikeouts, you're really not dealing with the right number for that salary. The other guys that cost that much got a shot at a bigger ceiling, I think. Stacks wise, I think you can play either side of the stacks. I don't love rostering the Blue Jays against Raggins. I would probably prefer the Royals against Jose Barrios. But I think either team is at least loosely in play, probably at moderate ownership and very good pricing. They're both better value options for sure, and particularly the Blue Jays. Again, I would have the Blue Jays heavily in the mix as a value stack, considering the talent that we're getting through this group for the very low prices. That's an average of $29.50 on FanDuel for those 4 and $45.50 on DraftKings. So that's really low for that group of hitters. I have to imagine they're going to be popular. Fanatic asking about Houston's ownership on FanDuel. Haven't seen it, but I'm going to guess it's going to be pretty high, given that run total, given how much everybody typically gets to them when they're in a good spot, and how a lot of the other very good teams look. Seems like it's going to draw the eye for the public a lot. Sean Manaea, Javier Assad. Assad, 5 games, 27 innings, got a 24.5% strikeout rate, pitching to a 2 ERA, a 4.09 xFIP. Stuff Plus doesn't really love the makeup of the arsenal, but he gets away with it. He's making it work. Just a 6.9% swinging strike rate, 25.9% CSW. None of this is good. Doesn't really seem to add like it would add up to a 24.5% strikeout rate even. But whatever he's doing on the mound is effective and has been working. He hasn't given up much power. He doesn't give up anything in terms of hard hits or exit velocity. The barrel rate is perfectly manageable. So I think there's a good path to success for the price. 8,800, 8,400 for Assad going up against a middle-of-the-road Mets team. It's not bad. I definitely think it's a spot where you can roll the dice for mid-level pitching. On the other side, Sean Manaea, 8,000, 7,600. It's another one. The price is right. I don't love tangling with the Cubs, but Manaea's got strikeout ability. It's just he walks a ton of hitters. He's not the most reliable pitcher in the world. 8.4% last year, 7.5% the year before. Those are manageable numbers in hybrid role, partly out of the pen last year. This was all starts. But typically we're putting too many guys on base with Manaea, but he does have strikeout upside. 25.2% over 24 and a third innings this year, 3.33 ERA, but a 4.62 xFIP. He's given up a little bit of hard hit and exit velo and barrels, but it hasn't amounted to home runs yet this year. That's probably one home run in those 5 starts. Yep, just one home run in 5 starts. But we also don't get a lot of depth out of Manaea. 4 2/3 last time, 5 innings the start before that, 3 2/3, 5 innings. He went 6 in his first start of the year, struck out 8. That was his best outing. Struck out 6, but walked 4, gave up 4 hits over that 4 2/3 against the Giants last time. Struck out 3, walked 3, gave up 2 earned runs on 4 hits in the 5-inning start against the Dodgers. Struck out 4, walked 3, gave up 6 earned and a home run on 9 hits in the 3 2/3 start against the Royals. Very mixed results. But there is a little bit of mid-range upside considering where he's priced and considering what he does for strikeouts. There are some strikeouts in this Cubbies lineup, 23.6% for the projected lineup, but I really like their ability to draw walks, get on base, do their thing against Manaea. So if he continues to struggle with the walks, continues to serve up a lot of premium contact to this team, allowing just one home run despite this kind of premium contact, that's a little bit of an outlier here. Stuff Plus doesn't like the makeup of Manaea's arsenal so far in a small sample, so I think he's avoidable, but I also think he's playable. Not a priority by any means. Stacking Cubs bats is certainly a possibility against him. I wouldn't necessarily shy away from stacking Mets against Assad, but again, he's really been pitching well. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but it's been absolutely working for him, so maybe not the best spot in the world to target. But the Mets are probably not going to be overly popular either, because I do think people will play that Assad spot. On the Cubs side, Nico Horner, just 1 stolen base, 271, 347, 104 WRC plus. Needs to be on base, stealing bases, and getting driven in by his friends, but he's a decent correlated scoring play. If Patrick Wisdom's in the lineup, he's got a 10 plus in the home run model, 3,600 at third base in the outfield, 2,500 first base and third base on the FanDuel slate. Definitely somebody to remember if you're stacking Cubs and if he is in the confirmed lineup. Right now, over 11 plate appearances, just a 200, 273, 500, 300 ISO in that small sample. No home runs, but a 109 WRC plus. Obviously, 11 plate appearances don't really matter. But he hit 23 home runs in 302 plate appearances with a 295 ISO last year, 25 home runs with a 220 ISO and 534 chances the year before. So a tremendous power hitter. You can see it in the barrel rate and the premium contact, 19.5% barrels, 54.7% hard hits last year, 14.2 and 46% the year before. Definitely somebody to keep in mind at a very cheap price. Pretty interesting one-off, too, if that's where he's hitting in the lineup against a lefty. Actually, that's a killer one-off at 2,500, 3,600 for the power upside. Chris Morel, 4,200, 3,100, very fairly priced for his power. 4 home runs, a stolen base, just an 85 WRC plus, just a 163 ISO, but we know there's more pop in that bat, and he's very cheap. Dansby at 41-31, also cheap. 3 home runs, 3 steals, coming around in the triple slash, 240, 304, 375. That was a little lower the other day, 94 WRC plus. Still needs to find his form for the season, but a player we like for both home runs and stolen base production. Ian Happ, great on base option, not really showing a lot so far this season, does have a home run on the board, 95 WRC plus, still a 336 on base. This is typically higher. That's why he typically hits up here. But a good option, and something that I like about these Cubs is they have a few guys that get on base and turn this lineup back over to the top. They're good at sequencing. They're good at keeping innings alive. Mike Tauchman's one of those guys. Tauchman gets on base at an absurd clip. He's also hit 3 home runs so far this year, but getting on base at a 432. That's what he's really good at over time. So I would include Tauchman in stacks. Nick Madrigal, Miguel Amaya, a little bit lower end so far in small samples this season. More skippable, maybe Alexander Canario at the bottom of the lineup you'll look at. 1 home run, 1 steal, a 129 WRC plus in just 23 plate appearances so far. If we're looking across the last couple years, so you don't get a lot of production out of either of those two at the bottom of the lineup there, out of Madrigal or Amaya. So maybe it's a shorter Cub stack if this is the version of the lineup that we get. But I do think it's very, very playable. And there's some mix and match parts that we might see instead. But this is a heavily right-handed platoon setup going up against Manaea. Wisdom is interesting for 36.25 if he's hitting second today. I like that. Nimmo, Lindor, Alonso, JD Martinez, pretty stackable off the top of the Mets. They're fairly priced. That's a $4,700 average on DraftKings. FanDuel, it's a little higher, 32.75, a little higher against the relative cap, but you got to like JD Martinez for only 2,800, 6.09 in the home run model. Assad, again, not giving up anything in terms of hard hit or exit velo, but we get Pete Alonso just under the magic number for home runs. He's got 8 on the year, a 250 ISO. JD Martinez hit more than 30 home runs last year, has tremendous contact over time. Hits a ton of home runs if he's going right. Just finding his footing for the season. He's made 13 plate appearances so far. Lindor under the Mendoza line after 128 plate appearances was not where I expected him to be, but I still love the any given slate upside, and I do think this all corrects itself. It's only April 30th. 5 home runs, 3 stolen bases. We're not that far off with Francisco Lindor. Nimmo, 206, 362, 353. Weird triple slash. The average will go up. The on base will stay about there. Maybe go up a little bit. Maybe come down slightly. 3 home runs, 2 steals is kind of in line so far, and creating runs 17% better than average despite hovering around the Mendoza line all season. So Nimmo's fine and will get better. For the 43-33 across sites, I think he's perfectly stackable. I don't really like Jeff McNeil hitting 5th. I just think Jeff McNeil's like a bottom of the lineup hitter. But the Mets obviously disagree. He's always in there. He can be productive on the right day. He can turn the lineup over or help keep things going. But I really don't love the spot there. Tyrone Taylor is an interesting bat, 3,100, 2,700, playing most days for the Mets, 66 plate appearances, 279, 308, 426. He's created runs 9% better than average. DJ Stewart is 36% better than average in a tiny sample of 66 plate appearances, but 3 home runs, a stolen base, a 220 ISO is kind of interesting from the left side going up against a righty. A lot of good lefty bats in this Mets lineup. Brett Beatty's one of those players. Out to another mediocre start. .060 ISO is not great. 1 home run and 91 plate appearances, not what we're looking for. Mediocre contact. Last year's premium contact was good with 43.4% hard hits. That's why I'm optimistic about the player overall. He's very cheap. I don't necessarily love it at third base, but it's not completely terrible. It's not like some of the Tyler Wades of the world at third base. So I think Beatty's playable from the bottom of the lineup. I think it's interesting that JD Martinez requires the dots between his initials, but DJ Stewart does not. Just pick a lane. FanDuel, DraftKings. One or the other. Let's use the initials, let's not. Let's use the juniors, let's not. Just everybody get on the same page. Anthony Taylor asked a good question. What do you guys value more, power or consistency hitting? For one, on FanDuel, home runs are a little bit more valuable, so there's a little bit more of a potential to look at power there. But for me, it's kind of a blend. It's more about consistent hitters who drive the ball. That's why I care about the StatCast numbers, the barrel rate, the hard hit rate. I don't necessarily need to have, like, who's a good example? Masataka Yoshida from the Red Sox. Pretty good example. Not a guy who hits a tremendous number of home runs. I actually don't know, as I'm saying this, what his premium contact numbers look like. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's okay. That's not great though. It's not as good as an example as I was thinking of. Somebody who. So a good way to go by it is by looking at like ISO along with those premium contact numbers. It's everything I talk about, right? Dansby's not a bad example, right? 240 average doesn't necessarily indicate like I'm the most consistent hitter in the world, but he does drive the ball. Right now he's sitting at just a 135 ISO, but we've got a very good premium contact profile. 10.8% barrels, 41.9% hard hits. Totally respectable, and that's maintained over time, right? This is the consistency that I'm looking for. Consistently driving the ball and then producing in different categories. Over time, Dansby Swanson, 22 home runs, stole 9 bases last year, hit 25 home runs, stole 18 bases the year before, a 170-something ISO that year, a 172 this year. Typically, I'm looking for, an above average, like 200-plus ISO from guys. But that's an example of a guy who doesn't hit for a massive amount of power, but hits for consistent power, a consistent ability to drive the ball, hit doubles, create scoring events. I'm definitely typically looking for somebody who can create rather than correlate. That's why I don't, Stephen Kwan, Nico Horner are examples of guys from the top of lineups who just absolutely need help from their friends. Look at Stephen Kwan's premium contact. If you're not driving the ball, yeah, he gets on base. That's what he does well. But that's why he's in this leadoff spot, because he gets on base, and then he correlates with these guys. So if I'm making a decision on one player, like that's Stephen Kwan plays in stacks, but if I'm looking for a one-off from this lineup, I'm looking at Josh Naylor, I'm looking at Jose Ramirez, even Andres Jimenez maybe, but not justifiable for what I'm talking about right now, so we'll skip him. Will Brennan maybe, could be an example of that based on, some of this year's production at the 183 ISO, the 3 homers, decent premium contact so far this year. There's no consistency over time in that one. With Naylor, with Ramirez, there is. But those are the guys, it's the guys who create batted ball events, the guys who create run scoring events and DFS scoring events that I'm looking for. So that's where I'm looking for the consistency of it. But power or the ability to drive the ball is always the primary factor. Hopefully that makes sense. Larry mentions another good candidate there, Varsho from Toronto. Could be an interesting one. The consistency there is certainly up and down, but there is a lot of power. There's a lot of ability to drive the ball, and what he's done so far this year is definitely a good example of that. Anthony Taylor mentions he needs to invest in a simulator. Well, I got to tell you, Anthony, I happen to know of a pretty good one. If you haven't been here to hear about it, our pals over at acemind.io, it's right there in black on the screen at the bottom, acemind.io. You go check those guys out. They're offering a 3-day free trial for their product. So you can get today, you can get tomorrow, and you can get the next day all for free. Simulate some MLB slates, simulate some NBA slates. We've got free projections for MLB up on our website. You can copy paste those and get them into the AceMind simulator. Run those. It creates a full pool of lineups for you. There's also an optimizer that you can use with our projections over there. NBA projections will go up after this show is over, and you can drop those into their simulator product. They've also got NFL. They've got PGA. They've got MMA. A lot of other stuff coming. Great spot to check out. And if you use promo code rotoscouts, all in caps, once you decide that you want to sign up for a pay product, not only do they have the cheapest prices in town, but you also get 20% off your first month with promo code rotoscouts. And that helps us out a little bit. Speaking of helping us out, hit the like button, hit the subscribe. Thanks for the reminder on the little promo there, Anthony Taylor. So, the hell were we? We got way derailed there. But it was a good question. It was a good conversation to have. Fanatic, you're welcome, buddy. I appreciate you too. I appreciate everybody coming back. right after I see Fanatic said, you really go into depth and don't try to sell stuff every 5 seconds, I threw a sales pitch. Hadn't seen that. But yes, try not to bog it down with, we're only here to sell you stuff. I don't really have that much to sell you right now. Or at least I'm not selling what I've got to sell. All right, so let's get out of this game. So the Mets, I think, are playable, especially given some low prices on some good hitters, but it's probably not the best spot in the world outside of maybe a little bit of contrarianism, maybe attacking any ownership that Assad is accumulating on his side. I think the Cubbies are definitely a little bit interesting against Manaea. If you get the wild version of Manaea and the Cubs do their thing in terms of getting on base, they could definitely exploit some weakness there. Patrick Wisdom in particular, especially if he's hitting second like he's projected there, is very interesting for the money for some home run upside. Up and down the Cubbies lineup, though, at least like 1 through 6, if this is the version of the lineup that we get, is kind of interesting. I would roll both pitchers. Manaea, a lot less enthusiasm, but I think there is a little bit of ceiling there. Projects out similarly to Assad on the other side, actually a little bit better. But I would prefer the Assad spot between the two. Somehow, it's only the third game. Logan Webb is a terrific pitcher. Just a 17% strikeout rate so far this season. A 2.33 ERA, a 3.19 xFIP, though. Just a 4.6% walk rate. Not generating a ton of swinging strikes or CSW, but he's been a much better strikeout pitcher in years past. 22.8% last year, 20.7% the year before. And what he does particularly well is just limit home runs by keeping the ball down. A little bit of hard hit, a little bit of exit velo, but it's on the ground. 0.6 degree average launch angle. It's him and Framber Valdez that do this exceptionally well. 3.1 degree average launch angle 2 years ago. A little bit of hard hit, a little bit of exit velo, but just a 1.40% home run rate. 6.9% barrels last year, 5.5% the year before. Doing his thing so far this year. 0.65% home run rate. I would imagine that's just one. That is just one home run. Another guy who's only given up one home run. That came against the Dodgers in his second start of the year. He has given up no runs in each of his last 2 starts. Another thing I love about Webb, depth. You get a ton of depth out of Logan Webb in the average start. 38 and 2/3 innings in his 6 starts. So if I'm bonus hunting, like I was saying about Jose Barrios, I would just prefer to go to Logan Webb for the money. All right, with Barrios at 10,000, just give me Webb at 10-2. He's a much more reliable option for chasing those bonuses. So I really like that. Went 8 innings in his last start, gave up 6 hits, struck out just 4. That was against the Mets. Walked 1, gave up no earned. 7 innings in 3 starts before that 8-inning start. That is a lot of pitching. 5 strikeouts, 4 strikeouts, 3 strikeouts. Gave up 3 earned runs in the 3 starts combined. 2 of them came against San Diego on April 7th. 1 of them came against the Rays. He only had 1, mediocre start all year. That was the one against the Dodgers. Just lasted 3 2/3. 5 earned on 7 hits. Struck out 5. Walked 2. Gave up the 1 home run. But at 8,300, that is your absolute crazy bargain of the day. That's the one that somebody's on the TV screaming and wearing a funny suit and telling you to come on down to their store before everybody's sold out, because that is a killer bargain on DraftKings. He's going to be super popular at that price. I can't imagine he's not, but it's totally worth playing. That is good chalk. Red Sox could get him, sure, but he's very, very difficult to homer against. You can see that in the home run model here. Rafi Devers at just 5.53. Tyler O'Neill at just 3.98. He's been one of the best home run hitters in baseball so far this year. And then it's kind of a mediocre lineup. Willie Abreu's been productive so far this year, but not overly high end. Jarren Duran's a good player at the top of the lineup. Connor Wong's been productive. We've loved his contact profile as homer hunting with cheap catchers over the last couple seasons, and he's been a killer 71 plate appearances. But that's a mid-level player. Yoshida, I do think, is a good bat, as I was saying before, but not a ton of power, not the most threatening hitter in the world necessarily, and certainly a guy that Webb can get through. Emmanuel Valdez, Bobby Dahlbeck, who I know and love, but not the most productive guy so far this year. A little bit of ability for Bobby, but I think Logan Webb can probably handle it. Maybe take advantage of a 49% strikeout rate. Ceddanne Rafaela hasn't really been good at all so far this year, so it's really not a challenging lineup for Logan Webb to get through outside of a couple guys up at the top. Like Devers, 279, 395, 471 to start the season. He's creating runs 44% better than average. O'Neill has 9 home runs. He's second or third in the league. He's slashing 329, 447, 729 with a 400 ISO, and he's created runs 121% better than average. Tyler O'Neill's been dynamite. And he also missed a week and change in there. Abreu, over 82 plate appearances, 292, 366, 472, creating runs 35% better than average. Wong has 5 home runs, a 343, 366, 582 triple slash with a 239 ISO, 64% better than average for run creation. And that's actually without his typically good premium contact. Again, very small sample. This should normalize back to like these levels. So potentially more coming from Connor Wong as we go forward. Just not the right spot to look for it against Logan Webb. Yoshida would be like the last. Well, for me, if I was stacking this team, I would include Dahlbeck. But it's very low end stacking Red Sox in this spot. They would really have to defy a lot of quality from Logan Webb. I love him at the price. Cooper Criswell, definitely a target. In 2 starts, 11 1/3, 14.6% strikeout rate. There is a relief appearance in here. Went 2 1/3 against Cleveland, struck out 0, walked 1, gave up 4 runs, but only 1 of them was earned to the 12 hitters that he faced. Decent start in the last one. That was against Cleveland as well. That was at Cleveland. Faced 18 hitters over 5 innings, 3 hits, struck out 3, walked 0, no earned runs. First start went just 4 innings. Gave up 2 earned, home run, struck out 4, walk 1. I just don't think we're dealing with a lot of upside or talent here necessarily. 33 innings all in relief last year, 17.9% strikeout rate at maximum effort pitching relief innings. 5.73 ERA, 4.54 xFIP, a little bit of power allowed. Well, home runs allowed, not necessarily power. And that's only a few home runs in a small sample of innings. But still, I think it's a gettable pitcher. I don't think there's really any reason to play him against a very capable Giants lineup. If this is the version of the Giants we get, they're very cheap. They're showing a little bit of power throughout. Good upper mid-range for some of these guys. They're very good players in terms of getting on base and setting the table. Everybody up and down the lineup has hit for a little bit of power so far. There's a few guys who steal bases, a couple really good run creators in there, a couple really good lefty bats to throw at Cooper Criswell as well here. So kind of like the spot for San Francisco. Not a high priority stack, but I think they're very playable for cheap prices. Jung-Hoo Lee, 269, 333, 356, coming around as far as setting the table. That's really all he needs to do up at the top of the lineup. Need a little bit more average and a little push for on-base percentage from him, but not a bad option at 4,200, 2,800. Lamont Wade is very cheap for his talent, 3,400, 2,700, especially on DraftKings at 34. There's no reason Lamont Wade should be at 34 while Matt Chapman is at 44. That makes no goddamn sense. Put Lamont Wade right next to Patrick Wisdom is a potentially really interesting one-off play. FanDuel at 27 also doesn't really make that much sense to me. Over 78 plate appearances so far this year. Lamont Wade, 339, 449, 452. He's created runs at a team leading 62% better than average. He's got a home run. He's got a stolen base. We've been talking about him for a season and a half now. Last year got on base at a 373 clip. For most of the season, that was over 400 at a cool-off in the second half. Hit 17 home runs. Created runs 22% better than average for the year. 256, 373, 417. Totally capable hitter. Very, very cheap. Chapman does hit for a ton of premium contact, let's say, and draws a moderate home run result from it. 221, 267, 389, 168 ISO. 15% worse than average creating runs so far. 4 home runs, a bizarre 3 stolen bases from Matt Chapman, padding the DFS scoring. But what we're looking for from Chapman is the home run. 6.87 in the model is perfectly effective. He's very cheap at third base for the upside. Premium contact not far off of last year's productive premium contact. Conforto from the left side cooled off after a good start. 267, 306, 467. Still has 5 home runs, 200 ISO, 120 WRC+. plus. He's been productive. It's nice to see. He's only 4,500, 3,100. He's very affordable. I would certainly include Michael Conforto in any stacks. Patrick Bailey, hit and miss, 3,400, 2,900. He's got 3 home runs, pretty productive triple slash, creating runs 40% better than average. 3,400, pretty nice price for a catcher on the DraftKings slate. It's just we've got Jorge Soler, Thairo Estrada, Mike Yastrzemski coming after him. Those are guys I want to work into stacks as well if I'm playing this team, especially Jorge Soler with all his power upside. Premium contact isn't quite where it belongs for him. 6.9% with 40.3% hard hits so far. 15% barrels, 48% hard hits in his big year last year. He's got 5 home runs so far this year, a 107 WRC+. plus. Not far off the mark, 186 ISO. Jorge Soler will deliver pretty good power results by the end of the year. We're just not quite there, but the price isn't quite where it should be either. So getting a cheap version of him. Estrada for 3,500, 2,800 across sites. He's got 4 home runs so far this year. Just an 89 WRC+, plus, but drives the ball, steals some bases when he's going right. The average of the triple slash isn't around where it's supposed to be yet. The average should go up. The on base should go up. Better player than he's been so far this year, but the power's there at least. Yastrzemski for 3,000, 2,300, 2 home runs, lefty hitter, 109 ISO. Hit a handful of home runs last year. 15 in 381 plate appearances with a 212 ISO, 17 in 558 with a 177 ISO the year before. Nick Ahmed is the more skippable guy in that lineup, but it's not a stack that I'm like prioritizing as a top end option, but as a value play, it's a very deep slate. There are some good teams in the value tier, but this is one to keep in mind maybe. Very, very cheap options. Really like the look of Lamont sitting in that 2 spot if that's where he is. So Logan Webb, gigantic guess, especially on DraftKings. Happy to pay the 10-2 on FanDuel. That's a correct price for Logan Webb in this spot. 8,300 is just stupid. Way too cheap on DraftKings. Absolute smash. Red Sox bats are pretty much a no. They would be very contrarian, I'm sure, on DraftKings. That's the angle that you would play them at. They're a little bit pricey for this spot, though, with his ability to drain power. So it's not a great spot, but you would probably be targeting a fair amount of ownership on the Logan Webb play. So maybe from a game theory perspective on DraftKings, less so on FanDuel because I think he's going to be lower owned on the FanDuel slate. Still probably draw some popularity, but probably a little bit lower owned on FanDuel. So it's just more of just a bad spot, I think, over there. If he does get popular on FanDuel, same idea. You can maybe target the ownership. Giants bats for cheap are kind of interesting. Simeon Woods Richardson, 7,000 on DraftKings, 8,300 on FanDuel. Projects out pretty well against the worst team in baseball. I know listen, you're going to keep hearing it. All right, so get used to it. Hit the thumbs down if you need to for when I get it wrong on the White Sox. But didn't blow up Joe Ryan by any means. Just managed to, for whatever reason, not strike out against him last night. So it ruined Joe Ryan's day, but I think he can come right back to the board with Simeon Woods Richardson here. He's been pretty effective over 2 starts so far, 25% strikeout rate in his 11 innings, a 2.45 ERA, 3.65 xFIP. Stuff Plus doesn't really like the arsenal so far, hasn't really given up any premium contact, 9.2% swinging strikes and just 23% CSW. Those certainly need to improve. But against a low-end team like this, I think he could succeed. He just faced this team on the 25th last Thursday, struck out 5, walked 1, gave up 2 earned on 7 hits, but that's an effective enough start for the money. We'd like to see the 6th inning to get the quality start for the price on FanDuel. On DraftKings, if you get that 5, you book a win here. I think that's pretty interesting. Mikey Soroka's been kind of a mess. Soroka, 6.83 ERA with a 5.90 xFIP. He's got a higher walk rate than a strikeout rate. That's never good. 12.8% walks, 9.8% strikeouts, over 29 innings in 6 starts. Obviously, it's not a huge sample, but it's a growing sample. He's really, really not looking good. I think we're pretty targetable here. We're seeing some very aggressively good power marks for the Twins up and down the lineup. They project out very well. They were the second, I think, overall stack on the board once I shuffled things up a little bit. So think it's more of a Twins spot. Don't think there's any good reason to play Michael Soroka. We haven't seen anything. Last time out, struck out 1 against this Minnesota team, gave up 2 home runs. Only 2 earned on 4 hits, just lasted 5 innings. The 2 earned runs, I guess, is what you hang your hat on there. But that was also on 2 solo home runs, so we know there's power upside there. He's given up a home run in every game this year. Every other game, it was just 1. But he gave up more earned runs in every other game. 5, 4, 2 in 6 innings against Kansas City, and then another 4-run game. Hasn't gotten completely obliterated yet. Like, we don't have a 10-run total in here, but there's a lot of runs been scored. There's a lot of hits been given up. He's given up a ton of premium contact and power. So, like him for a target. Wouldn't really take too many shares of White Sox. Maybe a couple contrarian spots, especially if Simeon Woods gets a little bit popular on DraftKings. Then maybe you grab a couple shares of Tommy Pham, Gavin Sheets, Eloy Jimenez, and Andrew Vaughn. That's your 4-man right there. It's the guys who are colored in green here that look pretty decent. Pham, a little bit of power, a little bit of speed. Only 15 plate appearances so far this year, but had a good year last year. 16 homers, 22 steals, over 481 with the Mets, 110 plate appearances. Gavin Sheets has been productive so far this year, 3 homers and a steal, 144 WRC+. Eloy Jimenez has a 105 WRC+. He's also got 3 homers. He is their best hitter in the current version of the lineup. Andrew Vaughn has not been productive at all so far this season, but is probably the next best guy. Benintendi's a slap hitter. Danny Mendick's less than that overall. Paul DeJong has hit 3 home runs, but done very little else at the plate. Martin Maldonado, occasionally good for the infrequent home run. Over 52 plate appearances, he has 1, and he's slashing .083, 137, 167. And he has been 116% worse than average creating runs. That's why he costs the dead minimum. On the Twins side, the interesting team here. Alex Kirilloff, 8.88 in the home run model. Carlos Correa back in the lineup at 9.71. Eduardo Julian, maybe not getting enough credit for his power production so far this year, 7.94. That could easily be as high as the rest of these guys in the 9s. Ryan Jeffers, 9.28. Byron Buxton leading the way at 12.41. Trevor Larnach, 7.53. Another playable hitter, over 34 plate appearances. He's sitting at 379, 441, 655. His creator runs 109% better than average in the tiny sample. What I like about Larnach, a lot of premium contact. Small sample, 13% barrels, 47.8% hard hits so far this year. Last year, that was 13.3 and 49.6 over 212 plate appearances. He turned it into 8 home runs. It wasn't an overly productive season. In 180 plate appearances the year before, he turned in 5 home runs on similarly high premium contact. But there's been a little bit of growth in like these 2 years compared to that year. If we get more regular playing time, I like him to have a good season with the bat. Buxton, Star caliber players slowly rounding into form for this year. 144 ISO, just a 92 WRC plus, only one homer, one steal. But the model obviously loves the power potential. 42.4% hard hits is down a little bit in a small sample. The barrels are way down, but this is who Byron Buxton really is when things are going well. So happy to grab shares of $4,300, $3,100 Byron Buxton from really anywhere in the lineup. You guys might be screaming at me that this lineup is confirmed, by the way. I haven't checked. Kirilloff, first base and outfield eligible on both sides, 4,100, 2,900. He's got a home run. He's got reasonably good premium contact, at least so far this year. Last year was okay. Year before was pretty decent. Fairly manageable strikeout rate. Higher last year. I like the upside from the left side of the plate. He's very cheap. Correa, 4,200, 2,800. For the talent, out to over 48 plate appearances, 275, 396, 400, a home run, 139 WRC plus in the tiny sample. Scuffled along last year, but over time, he's been a tremendous hitter. 2 years ago, 291, 366, 467, 22 home runs, created runs 40% better than average. One down season isn't a good reason to write off Carlos Correa. And he still made very good contact that year. Right? Despite the lack of production, he still hit 18 home runs last year. It wasn't a total dead spot. Edward Julian for 4,400, 3,300. He should just be more expensive. 7 home runs so far, a 289 ISO, 147 WRC plus, 233, 337, 522. The on base is perfectly fine. I don't care about the batting average being low. He strikes out a lot, but he draws walks and he crushes the ball when he connects. And he was doing that last year too. So I really like the spot for Edward Julian here. 3,300, again, too cheap at second base. Ryan Jeffers, 4,400, 3,500. A lot of catcher power. 101 plate appearances. He's got 5 home runs, a 247 ISO, creating runs 66% better than average. Moderate contact so far this year. Potentially room for growth in terms of the power that he's producing. If he gets back to these levels of premium contact, that's a big upswing from an already productive start to the season. Like Jeffers a lot. Interesting catcher bat. Interesting catcher one-off for 4,400 if you're not stacking Twins. Max Kepler hitting down lineup if this is where he's at. 4,000, 2,600 in the outfield. Very solid power bat over time. 44 plate appearances, just 1 homer so far. Slow start to the season, but that's a tiny sample. And we've seen Max hit more than 20 home runs multiple times. 24 last year and 491 plate appearances. Willie Castro, if it's Kyle Farmer down here, mix and match guys on the FanDuel slate for very cheap with triple position eligibility. They're a lot less interesting on DraftKings, but they can be productive players from time to time. Castro out to the better start than Farmer. And then Carlos Santana hitting for a little bit of power. 4 home runs, 163 ISO, making okay contact. Not completely dead possibly at the bottom of the lineup here. So I like the Twins quite a bit on this slate. I think there's a lot of value, especially based on the power. A lot of cheap prices, even cheaper on DraftKings compared to the FanDuel numbers. So really interesting stack for me. Simeon Wood-Richardson for value is a yes. Mike Soroka is a big no. The White Sox bats are a pretty big no, but maybe you can angle against if Woods-Richardson gets popular on DraftKings. If that's your thing, it's super contrarian. And again, Pham, Sheets, Jimenez, and Andrew Vaughn are probably your best choices. And then the Twins, big yes. They are in my lineup right now. The Rays, the Brewers are showing some interesting power here as well, going up against Tyler Alexander, who so far this year, 4.72% home run rate allowed on 9% barrels, 39.7% hard hits. He's got a 4.74 ERA, a 4.93 xFIP, just an 18.9% strikeout rate. It's 2 starts, 24 2/3 innings total with some bulk relief in there. It wasn't like pure bullpen work. They were all bulk relief appearances. So it was 5 innings in relief, 6 innings in relief, and 4 innings in relief. And then the 2 starts, he went 4 1/3 in one and 5 1/3 in the other. So he's stretched out. It's not like we're dealing with a truly converted reliever. It's just how they were using him. See what you guys are talking about real quick. Russ Snyder's batting 5th for the Red Sox. They work him in against lefties a lot, Russ Snyder. So against Logan Webb, that's a little bit weird. I'm looking at that lineup now. Durant, Devers, O'Neill, Abreu. Yeah, Russ Snyder he's just a journeyman utility man who happens to hit lefties kind of well. And he's just had that role. At least he's not hitting third is what I would say, which is where he's been dropping into the lineup against lefties, second or third, which is just bananas. Garrett Cooper's interesting, kind of in a similar vein to Bobby Dahlbeck, but I don't think he's, this is weird to say, but I don't necessarily think he's as good a hitter. I know that sounds strange. But I like what Bobby Dahlbeck does at the plate a little bit more in terms of his ability to draw walks, at least through the minor leagues. High strikeout guy, a lot of power. Garrett Cooper, good amount of power from the right side of the plate, but another guy who typically is more of a platoon specialist against left-handed pitching. I just wish they would give Dahlbeck a regular shot here with Tristan Casas out. Reese McGuire, Sedan Rafaela, bottom of the lineup for the Red Sox there. We do have the Rays lineup for this game, so since I'm staring at it, I will copy-paste it in so we can at least talk about one confirmed lineup during this show. So looking at Alexander, 4 strikeouts in every single one of those appearances that I mentioned. The only clean game came against the Yankees, oddly. 5 1/3 in that one. That was a full start. Gave up just 2 hits, struck out 4, walked 1. Yankees get weird sometimes. But every other game, he's given up a few runs. He gave up 2 home runs in each of his first 2 appearances, 1 home run against San Francisco in his 3rd appearance. Pitched clean for home run balls the last 2 games, but no real strikeout upside to speak of. I think there's going to be a decent amount of contact available. And I like some of these Brewers bats, and I really like what they're doing in terms of the home run upside for some pretty fair prices and how they connect with one of the other teams that I was just talking about. So little clue there as to who might be in my lineup. We'll see what we get from the confirmed version of the Brewers. The one thing that kind of sucks even on FanDuel is that you've got positional blockers with Gary Sanchez and William Contreras, both of whom have very solid power upside in this spot. Obviously, Contreras is a much, much better hitter than Gary Sanchez is, but they've both got power upside, and they would both be interesting for stacking, but I'm not leaving out Rhys Hoskins at first base. So even on FanDuel, that's a little bit of a conflict with this team. Kind of sucks. On DraftKings, it's more direct, just Contreras and Gary Sanchez. But Rhys Hoskins' home run pick of the day at 11.58 in the model. I think that was 4th overall on the board. Really like the upside for him. He's got 6 homers on the season, 234 ISO, 119 WRC+. A lot of good run creators so far this season for the Brewers up and down the lineup. It's funny how I can one day call them mediocre and then the next day call them a lot of good run creators. But that's what we do on these shows. Willy Adames, 4,400, 3,200. I think the price is right considering he's over the magic number for home run upside. He's got 3 on the season, 4 stolen bases, 126 WRC+. He's been productive. There's more premium contact potentially too. Last year, 2 years ago, 13% barrel rate. Last year, 12.4%. So far this year, just 8.5%, despite hitting for a little bit of power and connecting with the ball well. Last year, he hit 24 home runs. Everything else was worse. The triple slash, in terms of the batting average, the on-base percentage were worse, but he hit for a little bit more power. So I think the power upside is real. I think the 10.05 in the home run model is realistic. Blake Perkins, I like him if he's hitting cleanup, 4,000, 3,300. Talked about him a few times already. Former second-round pick, 280, 393, 440. Maybe coming into his own a little bit with kind of a full-time opportunity here. It's just 89 plate appearances. We don't want to get too excited, but 3 homers, 2 steals, creating runs 40% better than average. Gary's got 3 homers in just 52 plate appearances. Been productive, 255 ISO, 111 WRC+. Doing Gary things. Joey Ortiz, I think, is an interesting bat. Very, very cheap third base and second base eligibility on FanDuel. Just third base on DraftKings. I think he's playable over there. 279, 392, 426 with a 134 WRC plus in a small sample. He's got a home run on the board. I think that came against the Yanks the other day. Owen Miller, a playable part, especially for the dead min with triple position eligibility, second, third, and first. We obviously like him best at second base. For the minimum price, that's perfectly fine. 2,900 first and third only. Less effective on the DraftKings slate. Not a good hitter. Not somebody that you're really going out of your way for, just a salary thing. If this gets you to a much better pitcher, let's say, then maybe you can play it like overgoing at Joey Ortiz if that $500 makes a difference. 3,000 for Jackson Chourio for the talent. It hasn't really been frequently on display so far at the major league level, but if he's in the lineup, even at the bottom of the lineup, 3,800, 3,000 for the raw ceiling that kid has, I think he's worth it. Just 202, 248, 351 so far. Just a 67 WRC plus. Does have 4 homers, 4 steals. 8.1% barrels isn't great, but we'll take it for the argument. I think he's very playable. Joey Wiemer, also pretty playable from the bottom. Last year, 13 home runs, 11 stolen bases, and 410 plate appearances. Not a good season by any means. 75 WRC plus. He was 25% worse than average creating runs. What I'm looking for if I roster Joey Wiemer is cheap shots at these counting stats that he can produce. That's about it. 2,200 on FanDuel, 2,000 on the DraftKings slate. If I'm building a lot of Brewers lineups, not leaving him out. In one Brewers lineup to 10 Brewers lineups, he might make it into like the 9th and the 10th ones, right? He's down the line, but he's definitely playable as a wraparound for the cheap prices with that ability to produce home runs and steals. The Rays are facing Freddie Peralta. 10,000 on DraftKings, yes. 10-4 on FanDuel, yes. Freddie projects at the top of the board. Right? It's not easy money with Freddie today. It's a challenging enough matchup with some of the hitters. Not that they're off to good starts, but there's some good hitters in this lineup for Tampa Bay. Freddie is a tremendous pitcher, though. 33.3% strikeouts so far this year, 3.18 ERA with a 3.06 xFIP. Last year, 30.9% strikeouts. Year before, 27.1. One of the top pitchers in baseball. So probably a little bit cheap, even at 10,000 on DraftKings. Where does that put him? He's all right. That makes him the most expensive. I guess that's fair. 500 more than Ronaldo. So we'll call that a fair price on DraftKings. 10-4 on FanDuel, perfectly fair. I think you can fire away with shares of Freddie here. It's just you do have a lot of other pitchers at not the same high projections, but within range for better values. 112 WRC plus rating so far for Freddie, giving up a 2.63% home run rate. A lot of barrels so far. A lot of launch. Some hard hits mixed in there. Last year that was 8.5%, fewer hard hits, less exit velo. Year before he was spectacular for limiting barrels, limiting premium contact, just a 1.89% home run rate. So he's given up a few more long balls over the last season in these 5 starts, but nothing to really be concerned about. Yandy Diaz at the top of the lineup, 5.89 in the home run model. Aros Arena, 5.93. Paredes, 7.17. None of them with a great shot to hit a home run, but all 3 of those guys are in the mix for power against Freddie. But I think that's all we'll see. 2-run shot against, something like that from one of these guys. But not likely that the Rays blow this up. I don't think it's a great spot to stack Rays. If I am stacking Rays, I'm definitely starting it with Yandy Diaz, despite the slow start, 228, 299, 298. We saw how good he is over the last 2 seasons. Totally believe that it's going to round into form. Richie Palacios for the power upside that he's provided so far this year is kind of interesting for the money. 297, 423, 469. He's got 3 home runs, 3 steals, creating runs 62% better than average. Just an atrocious matchup against Freddie Peralta. Arosarena, Paredes, that's where some power is in this lineup. Arosarena has been pretty bad overall, but 3 home runs, 4 steals. Paredes, 283, 353, 509. He's been a really, really good power hitter over the last year and change, and he's hitting the ball with regularity this year. He's been very, very productive. For 3,300 at first base, third base, 4,700 at third base, probably too cheap on both sites, even against Freddie. Ahmed Rosario for 4,500, 2,800. Off to a great start, over 100 plate appearances, 320, 340, 454, 2 homers, 3 steals. Playable part for sure. Howard Ramirez, definitely a playable part with an ability to drive the ball. He's another guy that would have been a good example before in terms of not the greatest barrel rate in the world, but I talk about him a lot because he hits the ball consistently with better than a 40% hard hit rate, and typically is a productive guy for driving the ball. So far this year it hasn't been in place, but typically has like one of those okay mid-level ISOs and can create runs and hits a lot of doubles while not necessarily homering a lot. But he doesn't really strike out, and he doesn't really walk either, so he's constantly putting the ball in play. That's another factor in that. In addition to looking for that good contact, that ability to drive the ball, when you can combine that with a low strikeout rate and also a low walk rate, you're getting a lot of contact, so you're getting a lot of hits from those guys, or a lot of potential hits. So that's another factor in evaluating that type of a player. But when we get to the true power hitters, the pure power guys, I'm looking for the high walk rate. So it is a difference in the 2 types of evaluation for the 2 player types. Ben Rortvedt, more of a defensive catcher, but out to a good start, over 55 plate appearances, 362, 455, 426. Just no real power to speak of and not that good a hitter overall. Caballero, a little bit of speed, 9 stolen bases. Jose Siri at the bottom of the lineup, 6 stolen bases. Playable parts if you're building a lot of Rays stacks, but neither is a priority in a totally deprioritized option. So Freddie Peralta is a big yes. Brewers bats are a pretty big yes for me. You'll note that with the Brewers, by the way, though, the projections for a lot of the guys down lineup are not like crazy high, just raw projection wise. It's more about the opportunity against Tyler Alexander for a little bit of power. It might be a better FanDuel stack than a DraftKings stack. Might be a more of a secondary stack on DraftKings. We're just looking for some of the top of the lineup power, some Gary Sanchez in there. But I do think that Ortiz, Blake Perkins, and potentially Jackson Churio might be a little bit underrepresented by these projections for their talent. It's just a matter of things settling in and who they're actually going to be this year. But that is just a little word of warning. It is kind of a power upside based interesting spot for me, and they're all cheap enough that it just kind of works. Nationals going up against John Gray. This is another one that to me is super interesting. John Gray is pitching maybe, at least in terms of strikeouts, at the highest level we've seen. 24 and 2/3 innings. He's got a 29.1% strikeout rate over 5 starts so far. There's also a weird little bullpen appearance in there. 10% walk rate isn't great. He's giving up premium contact. A lot of hard hits. A lot of exit velo. A lot of barrels on a high launch angle. Hasn't gotten burnt for home runs yet. Stuff Plus doesn't like his arsenal at all, but it works. Somehow, even with this, he's generating a 12.6% swinging strike rate this year. 2.92 ERA with a 3.35 xFIP. I haven't taken a look at the arsenal, see what's changed or what's going on, but it's one I'm going to take a look at between now and his next start. Assuming if things go well for him today, anyway. Let's say that. If it all blows up and falls apart, then I won't bother. Last year, 21.6% strikeout rate, 4.12 ERA, 4.37 xFIP. Year before, 25.7% strikeout rate, was more effective that season, 3.96 ERA, 3.46 xFIP, 11.6% swinging, 12.2% swinging. The swinging strikes are actually in line with where they've been. It's just finishing hitters off better this year. But an effective pitcher over time who's never really all that expensive. Checks in today at 7,300, 7,800. Great discount spot going up against a fairly weak national squad. They don't strike out a ton, but with his weird ability to generate strikeouts, I think it's a good value option. In his last start, we talked about it before the game. It looked like a killer spot. He was going up against the Mariners, but I didn't completely love it because I was concerned about whether or not he would even complete 5 innings, because just 4 days before he had thrown an inning in 2/3 in relief. He faced 5 Braves hitters. He struck out 4 of them, pitched a clean inning in 2/3, but it was just weird. He went on, he came back out on 4 days rest, and that came to pass. He went just 4 2/3 in that one, so he didn't even qualify for the win bonus. Faced 22 Mariners hitters, gave up 7 hits, just 1 earned run, and he struck out 7 of 22 in 4 2/3. So it was a dynamite performance anyway. It was just shortened by that weird relief appearance. That was on the 24th. Today's the 30th, so we're fine in terms of rest. I expect John Gray to have a full start here. I think it's a good opportunity. 7 strikeouts before that Atlanta appearance against the Tigers in a full start. Worked 6 innings in that one. Worked 5 innings against the Athletics back on the 11th. Struck out 9, gave up just 1 earned run. Has not given up more than an earned run in any of his last 5 starts. First start of the year was a mess. Struck out just 2, walked 3, gave up a homer, 5 earned runs on 7 hits against the Cubbies. But every other start than that has been 1 earned run or fewer, and he's given up 2 home runs all season. So that's interesting. 78, very good price. 73, even better price. Again, that is aggressively good in terms of that bargain bin on DraftKings. It's not quite Cole Ragans for 78, but it's a better matchup, and you're saving $500. If you're looking at the Nationals bats, CJ Abrams is just on fire to start the season, and he's just a terrific, terrific player. I expect him to continue, maybe not at this outrageous pace, but I expect him to have a very good season. 297, 377, 634. He's got 7 home runs, 6 stolen bases, a monster 337 ISO, creating runs 74% better than average. Jesse Winker's still been pretty productive. We're down to 277, 395, 436, but he's getting on base. The average isn't bad. It's just declined a little bit. 3 homers, 3 steals, still creating runs 39% better than average. Joey Meneses has been messy, 35%. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Apologies for Joey Meneses has been messy. That just sounds stupid and like pre-written, and it wasn't. 3,000, 2,600 across sites at first base. He's very cheap. He hit for better average last year, but only 13 home runs. Year before that, in just 240 plate appearances this year, he went 324, 367, 563 with 13 homers. And then hit the same amount of home runs in 3 times the plate appearances the next season while slashing 275, 321, 401. We could get back to this guy, he'd be really, really interesting. But what we've got right now is nowhere near that. Luis Garcia Jr. for 33.28 across sites has been productive to start the year, but we know he's not really, much of a hitter. 111 WRC plus. He could continue about this pace. Maybe the average comes down. The on base isn't outrageous for him. 5 steals. It's just weird that he's hitting cleanup on a regular basis. The hell did this game go? Oh, there it is. And we do have the Rangers lineup on the other side. I just wanted to stop and see if we have that lineup yet. Nick Senzel continues to get a shot in this lineup. 2,500, 2,800. 5 home runs is very productive over 44 plate appearances. He's got a massive 410 ISO, 17.2% barrel rate. Keep it up, Nick. Maybe you'll still salvage a little bit of career. How old is Nick Senzel now? Let's say like 28, 29? 28. About to be 29. 29 on June 29th. I'm rooting for you, Nick. It's a very cheap price for a guy who's been productive in terms of power so far this season. And once upon a time, was one of the top prospects in baseball. 3,300, 2,500 for Kiebert is pretty cheap. Doesn't strike out a ton. Doesn't walk a ton. So there's a lot of contact. Just medium contact, though. Doesn't generate a ton of barrels, doesn't generate a ton of power. Needs to get better in that department, but very good at putting bat on ball as a play everyday catcher. Trey Lipscomb, Eddie Rosario, Jacob Young, kind of low end at the bottom of the lineup. Young's been pretty productive. He does have 12 stolen bases, a 118 WRC plus, getting on at a 368 clip. So maybe as a wraparound option, 2,900, 3,100, that could be effective if you're targeting John Gray with national shares. I just greatly prefer the John Gray side of this for where he's priced. I think it's a great opportunity. You're on DraftKings and this doesn't appeal to you for 15.6 total, an average of 7,800 for those 2 pitchers, I don't know what we're doing. Or you could play it this way too. 15-1, an average of 7,500. I really like that opportunity to go double discount at pitcher on DraftKings today and still have a lot of talent and upside. The Rangers bats going up against Mackenzie Gore. Gore's got a 28.7% strikeout rate, 3.12 ERA with a 3.25 xFIP. So on the surface and under the covers, he's been basically the same. He's got a terrific 116 stuff plus rating. So everybody likes his arsenal. Everybody likes his makeup. Last year, over 136 and a third, 25.9% strikeout rate, 4.42 ERA with a 4.11 xFIP. Had a little bit of a home run issue last year. Was better for it the year before in 70 innings. But a talented young pitcher who, seems to be making some strides and growing a little bit. 12.4% swinging is pretty good. We'll see what he does with the run numbers so far, but the home runs haven't been bad. Premium contact so far in a small sample hasn't been bad. I think he could effectively keep up what he's doing. It's just a really good lineup on the other side. Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, Nathaniel Lowe, Adolis Garcia, Jonah Heim, Wyatt Langford. That's an enviable top 6. Semien, 252, 315, 429 to start his year. Creating runs 12% better than average, 5 homers and a steal. Corey Seager's been slow to get things started, but we know that this is a superstar. 2 home runs, no stolen bases, 16% worse than average creating runs over 114 plate appearances. My money's on the next couple hundred being a lot better than that. 327, 390, 623 last year, 296 ISO, 33 homers, 69% better than average creating runs. Nathaniel Lowe is still too cheap for his talent. 2,800 on FanDuel, 3,900 on DraftKings at first base. 310, 375, 448 with a home run to start the season over 32 plate appearances. Last year, 17 homers in 724 plate appearances, over which he created runs 14% better than average. That is a whopping amount of plate appearances. Only rivaled on the team by Marcus Semien, who was another 20 and change on top of that. Year before for Lowe, 302, 358, 492 with 27 homers in 645 plate appearances. He's a tremendous option as well for 3,900, 2,800. Put him on the list with Lamont Wade and whoever the hell that was. Who was it? Oh, from the Patrick Wisdom. Lowe's a different kind of play. Another guy who kind of fits that profile of like, yeah, we've seen power seasons from him, but you're rostering him for cheap and Patrick Wisdom for cheap for different reasons. It results in, potentially the same amount of points, but Nathaniel Lowe is a much better hitter than Patrick Wisdom. Patrick Wisdom is a much better power bat than Nathaniel Lowe is on the average day. But you can definitely get a lot of quality out of either one of them for the money. Between those two, if it came down to it, like let's say they were the exact same price, and I don't remember exactly where Patrick Wisdom was, exact same price, let's say they were both hitting second and going against somehow the same pitcher. Which of those two do I choose? Which was kind of the nature of the original question. With a guy that's such a good hitter as Nathaniel Lowe, I probably go that way. I also think he's in the better lineup. Not necessarily facing the better pitcher. It's also a lefty-lefty versus a righty-lefty. There's an advantage there. There's a lot of nuance to these questions. But I think in a vacuum, most days between those two, I probably opt for the better hitter because on a bad day for power, Nathaniel Lowe still got a good shot to go, 2 for 4, 2 for 5 with a double, maybe drive in some runs, where Patty Wisdom is a lot more of a home run or bust kind of a candidate. A lot of strikeouts, a lot of 0 days. So it all depends. It's a lot, but again, there's a lot of things to factor into it, a lot of nuance with it. Adolis Garcia requires no nuance. He's just tremendous. 8 home runs, 4 stolen bases, a 160 WRC plus, a 301 ISO so far this year in 114 plate appearances. He was a star last year. He's a star this year. 5,600, 4,000. Happy to pay it when I'm stacking this team. Tremendous right-handed hitter. Jonah Heim, 4,000, 3,000. Playable catcher. 3 home runs so far over 91 plate appearances. Creating runs 7% worse than average. But we know there's a little bit more to give for Jonah Heim. Just getting on base at a 286 clip. Like the upside for him going forward. 3,800, 2,800 for Wyatt Langford. Finally got his first home run. It was an inside the Parker the other day. One of very few people in Major League Baseball to get an inside the Parker for your first career home run. So far, 13% worse than average for run creation, but a very high-end young player that they like a lot, and he's very cheap across sites if you're stacking this team. Josh Smith, Davis Wenzel, Leody Taveras at the bottom of the lineup. More afterthoughts. Smith has been productive over 92 plate appearances. You got to hand it to him. 304, 402, 456. He's created runs 50% better than average. Keeping himself alive in this lineup, but for the price, the triple position, the price, the dual position on DraftKings, maybe he's interesting. Just not a hitter I like all that much over time. So John Gray for value, big yes. Particularly as a SP1, SP2 at 73 on DraftKings. I think that's a very playable spot, and I like him at 78 on FanDuel as a value option. Mackenzie Gore, I think you can get away with it. I think he's talented enough to post a decent game, but he's not value priced. He's just kind of stuck floating in the middle. Doesn't project great, and a really strong opponent on a huge slate. Why would you do it? It's just a spot where you don't need to tangle with the Rangers. Rangers bats against Gore, yes, but a little bit more of a tempered yes than it might otherwise be because of his talent. And Nationals bats against John Gray are playable. I don't want to take them off the board. Abrams, Winker. I think Joey Gallo's on the IL, right? Well, Abrams and Winker, and then, pick your poison the rest of the way. But at least moderately playable. Top of the board, the Astros. Let me take a swig of very cold coffee. Oh, there's a whole bunch of lineups just came in. Astros lineup is here. Let me know in the chat. I'll pull the chat back up in just a sec. Let me know if there's anything interesting in any lineups that have come out that you guys have spotted that you want to talk through. Happy to pull it up and go through it. Trying to make decent time on a huge slate. It's 4:30. We're doing all right. Loperfido is in the lineup for Houston. I don't really see any need to play Carlos Carrasco on this slate. 4.63 ERA, a 4.85 xFIP, 18.9% strikeouts, 12.3% walks in a small sample so far this year. Last year, just 15.8% strikeouts over 90 innings, 20 starts, a 6.80 ERA, a 4.93 xFIP, was super targetable for premium contact and power. I just think it's a spot to take some Astros bats. Let's start with Loperfido. Very popular pickup over the last couple of weeks because he's been raking in the minors. Over 122 plate appearances in AAA so far this year, playing as a 25-year-old, but this is very good production for anybody. 13 home runs in 122 plate appearances at AAA. Believe that leads professional baseball right now. Like professional baseball. Was slashing 287, 393, 713 with a 152 WRC plus. Was striking out at an aggressive 30.3% rate, and he's been that player over time in the minors, but also was drawing walks at a 13.1% clip. Had a 426 ISO. Killer on base, killer ISO. Potentially a very interesting hitter. Lefty bat. He's outfield eligible at the dead min on FanDuel. I'm not sure if DraftKings has worked him in yet. I am not entirely sure. The word was that they were going to bring him up to play first base over Jose Abreu, but it looks like John Singleton's in the lineup at first base, unless that's the DH today. That might be the config. Regardless of where he plays in real life, I'm just kind of curious. 2,000 for the potential hitter that he might end up being. It's an interesting play going up against Carrasco and all the power that he gives up, and it's a very interesting way to just average down some of these salaries. You also get Alex Bregman, who's been scuffling along over 108 plate appearances, has no homers, just one steal. It's been 35% worse than average creating runs. $4,900 on DraftKings is cheap. Not quite as cheap as $2,700 on FanDuel, so that's very interesting. Just having him there, if you just stack the top four, brings it down to $3,600 a man, and we know that over time, Alex Bregman is capable of being a $3,600 hitter at third base. Jordan Alvarez, Kyle Tucker, tremendous bats. Both have 7 home runs. Jose Altuve's also got 7 home runs. Altuve's at 191 WRC plus. Alvarez is at 140, and Kyle Tucker at 172. 7 homers, 5 steals for Tucker. You also get Jeremy Pena slotting in at 321, 357, 450. Creating runs 34% better than average. 3 homers, 4 steals. Jainer Diaz, 291, 333, 447. A 124 WRC plus. 3 homers, no stolen bases. It's amazing that the Astros haven't won more games this year, right? Like their win total has not been good. But this lineup is tremendous. They've only won 9 games this year. They're 9-19. They have a 321 winning percentage. It's bananas. That's the second worst record in the American League. Fourth worst record in baseball. Only the Rockies, the Marlins, the White Sox, only the Rockies, the Marlins, and the White Sox, rather, have a worse win total than the Astros. I promise that the Astros are a much better team than any one of those groups on that list. This Astros team is going to finish at a much better win total than what they've got right now, which is obvious. Much better winning percentage than where they're at right now. It's amazing that they won so few games, especially with like all these guys out to good to very good starts. Yeah, Bregman's struggling. They haven't gotten a ton from the bottom of the lineup. Jose Abreu's been dead. That's why Loperfido's here. Singleton hasn't really done anything with his 47 plate appearances. Got a little bit out of Jake Myers, but the top end of this lineup is super, super talented. The fact that we're getting him a little bit cheap against a pitcher like Carrasco, it's a major spot tonight. So definitely a spot to fire away. They're going to be crazy popular, though. Both sites are going to be very, very popular. Definitely worth getting to, though. The Guardians against Hunter Brown. I think they're pretty interesting. Guardians won a bunch of games. If we're talking about wins, the Guardians have the Astros record flipped. Astros are 9-19. The Guardians are 19-9. They don't hit for a ton of power, but they're hitting for a little bit of power this year. A little bit more pop in the bats, a little bit less total station-to-station approach. A lot of decent on-base skills, a lot of good run creators in this lineup. Everybody hits for average. Well, not everybody. Down the bottom of the lineup, not so much. But a lot of good hitters for average in this lineup. I just like what they do, and I think they're pretty effectively priced going up against a scuffling Hunter Brown. 9.68 ERA, a better half that in terms of the xFIP, but 4.41 isn't what we're looking for from an xFIP against a team like this. Gave up 3 earned in his last start on 4 hits, lasted just 4 innings. Gave up only 2 earned against Atlanta somehow. Only struck out 3, walked 3, gave up a home run and 5 hits over 6 innings in that one. Disaster against Kansas City was a total meltdown. That's why the ERA is so high. 2/3 of an inning, he gave up 9 runs on 11 hits. Ouch. The 6 strikeouts against Washington was the high watermark for the season. He had 5 strikeouts in his first start of the year on March 30th against the Yanks. And then just 3 strikeouts in the other 2 starts where he had any kind of innings. Hasn't been good this year. I think he's got talent. Stuff Plus likes him a little bit. but just hasn't really found it for this season. He's avoided barrels, a lot of exit velocity, a lot of hard hits, but he keeps it on a decent launch angle. He was doing that a little bit last year, 6.9 degree average launch last year. A little bit more barrels, a little bit more pop overall. 5.09 ERA, but a 3.52 xFIP, had a 26.8% strikeout rate. This is what I mean when I say I think he's got talent, but just has not been good this year. So I think you can target him with some Guardians. Steven Kwan, as mentioned before, more of a hits for average, gets on base, and then needs help to provide actual scoring. He's got 3 home runs this year, though. A little bit more pop than we're used to from Steven Kwan. 3 stolen bases. We like to see him run a little bit more when he's getting on at this kind of a clip, but 143 WRC plus, definitely a good way to start out a stack. Just know what you're buying. Know that he needs to get driven in with Andres Jimenez, Jose Ramirez following. Jimenez off to a pretty good start. No power yet. 4 stolen bases, getting on at a 345 clip. 275, 345, 343, creating runs 5% better than average. There is power there, 15, 20 home run power. So I think there's a little bit more to come. No premium contact really for him, but I think there's a little bit more pop. He doesn't strike out. None of these guys strike out. Another reason not to play Hunter Brown. Jose Ramirez, 10.7% strikeouts, 3.3% walks. Remember what I said before too about low strikeout rate, low walk rates. That's what all these guys do. So just a ton of balls in play against this team. That's what I mean when I say they play station-to-station baseball a lot. Ramirez has 5 homers, 4 stolen bases, creating runs 7% better than average. Josh Naylor's been better so far this year. 50% better than average, a 253 ISO, leading the team with 6 home runs. Getting on base at a 360 clip. He's been very, very good. 5,100, 3,600. Fairly priced, especially with everybody around him being pretty cheap. Easy ways to average that down with some of these guys. Will Brennan for 34.28 has 3 home runs, 2 steals. 91 WRC plus isn't great. 282 on base isn't great. Tyler Freeman playing basically every day in center field. 3,000, 2,900. He's a second baseman and a third baseman, which is interesting on FanDuel for the price. 215, 308, 380 to start. 3 home runs, 3 steals, but has been coming on of late. Is a guy that several years ago was the Guardians' top overall prospect. Just been a little bit slow getting going. 4 home runs, 5 steals, and 168 last year. Created runs 16% worse than average. 86 plate appearances the year before that. But was once upon a time a fairly highly regarded prospect. A lot of more hit tool, low strikeout oriented. Once upon a time, a scouting report referred to him as a DJ LeMahieu type hitter. So kind of interesting for the price late in the lineup if you're going, or later in the lineup if you're going to this team. Esteban Florial, 3,100, 2,300, hasn't really delivered on anything this year. There's a little bit of talent lurking in there. It would be interesting to see him over a full 600 plate appearances, but we're probably never getting that. Probably in reality as a quad A type player. Bo Naylor right at the Mendoza line, 2 home runs, cheap catcher option, but hasn't been all that productive. And Brian Rocchio is mostly here for defense. Astros bats, gigantic yes. Guardians bats, super playable. Could easily go off for a game where they just hit 1 home run, but managed to score 12 because they end up with 11 base hits against Hunter Brown. So I could definitely see the Guardian stack getting there for the price. Wouldn't take either of these pitchers. I think they're both off the board. Holy hell, I've missed a lot of chat. I'll scroll up, I guess. Anthony Taylor is saying, or said like an hour ago, do I have to accept those super chats? Asking because I don't have my info online for sites. I'm not sure what you're referring to, Anthony. Do I have to accept those super chats? Anthony, if you're still out there, let me know what you're talking about. I haven't sent you anything at all in terms of a super chat or a request for money or anything like that. So I would say no. I wouldn't accept anything. If you're talking about sending me something, it's nice. Yeah, one day we will probably charge for these things. Maybe sooner than later. But right now, don't worry about it. Brother Noomsy, known Coop since he was 3 years old. Played high school basketball for his dad. Oh, Garrett Cooper? That's pretty cool. Hope I didn't say anything too bad about him. Jose Abreu, option to the spring training facility. Makes sense for how bad he's been. Have him down there talk to the kids. More of a coach than a player. Sal Perez looks like he's back in the lineup. Fuck, knew I shouldn't have benched him. I took him out of the lineup at the last minute. in the season in the Dynasty League because I was worried he would miss 2 days instead of 1 day. But I'm glad he's back in the lineup anyway. Mamba's here. Mamba's saying, no, I think it's incredibly intelligent if that's what you were thinking. I'm not sure what you guys are talking about. Always here to help. Terry, setting up non-toxic community is the best thing to happen for DFS. I try, buddy. It's something I was always shooting for back at the old place and everything. It was one thing that initially at the old place I liked a lot was that it started out fairly non-toxic, and then after certain people weren't there anymore, it seems to have gone downhill. Don't know who I could be referring to. Anthony Taylor's got a good feeling tonight. I love it. Following up a good night last night. Dennis Forgy, let's hope Senzel is still on a big league roster when his birthday comes around. I like it. Anthony's got 10 MLB and NBA lineups. He's on Toronto. Got Richardson running optimizers now. About to pay for a sim. Like it, buddy. Larry, I think we all had Senzel on a dynasty team once upon a time. Yeah. Loperfido not on. Yeah, he is on FanDuel. He's not on DraftKings, at least as of the last time I checked. But somebody check that out if you get a chance. Let me know, because then I'll go back and grab the salary sheet, like I said. Yeah, their SPs have kind of stunk. Absolutely. Hunter Brown is broken, says Shannon Lambert. Yeah, it's the pitching that's really held down. Not only their starting pitching, their bullpen has been a complete disaster. Ryan Presley fell apart out of nowhere. Josh Hader, who they brought in to be the closer, fell apart out of nowhere. It's been bad. Oh, Cooper Criswell. Okay. I was thinking the other Cooper on the Red Sox. That's cool, man. Again, I hope I didn't say anything too bad. I know I don't like him as a starter today, but I'm sure he's a perfectly nice guy. Is his dad a good basketball coach? So let's talk Spencer Turnbull. Hell of a start. 27 innings, 5 starts, 28.3% strikeout rate. He's walked a few too many at 9.4, but it has not burnt him. 1.33 ERA has been tremendous. 3.28 xFIP. It's been really good on the surface. It's been really good under the covers. 30.3% CSW. We're throwing a ton of strikes. We're generating a 10.1% swinging strike rate. Just 35.4% hard hits. 85.8 miles an hour of exit velo. Hasn't really given up many home runs. 6.2% barrels. Getting a lot of ground balls with an 8.5 degree average launch angle. I'm highlighting all these things because, one, it's a massive improvement for Spencer Turnbull. Part of it's based on developing a dominant sweeper that Stuff Plus really likes. A lot of his Stuff Plus comes out of that sweeper. But I also highlight it because this might be the last time we get him for a while. He's about to lose his job in this rotation. This might be his last start for a few weeks, which sucks because he's been really, really good. But I love him in this spot. I think it's unfair that he would lose his job. Philly doesn't want to go with a 6-man, and I get that. But especially in a rotation with, maybe a couple extra days rest here and there for Nola and Wheeler would be beneficial. You got guys who are, in and out of the rotation sometimes, like Taiwan. It's just, it's, as Larry's saying in the chat, stinks that Turnbull's going to the pen for Taiwan. Yep, he's been really good this year. I don't think Philly appreciates what they've got. So, one last bite at the apple, 9,500, 9,100. You can better be sure he's in my placeholder right now on FanDuel. He's in my lineup for the Dynasty team. Hopefully it's not just one last ride, but I think it is a good spot going up against this Angels team. 22.9% strikeout rate for this version of the Angels lineup, but there are a ton of heavy strikeout guys who may or may not be in the lineup, and some of these guys are small sample overperformance in terms of avoiding strikeouts so far this year. Like Brandon Drury at just 18.9. He was at 26% last year. Mickey Moniak strikes out a ton if he's in the lineup. Logan O'Hoppe, 22-24, that's about right. 30.8 for Zach Neto was lower last year, so maybe it's a give and take there. But I do think there's a ton of strikeouts. Even Trout was 28.7% last year. He's still Mike Trout, so that's the one spot that I worry about. Joe Adell's been really good over the last 59 plate appearances. 4 home runs, 5 stolen bases, 302 ISO, 178 WRC+. Moved up to second in the lineup yesterday. Talked about him in excited terms yesterday, and kind of if the breakout is here, I'm happy to see it. I just don't want to see it continue for one night tonight. Take the night off, Joe Adell. Do not produce, but maybe a potential third bat in this lineup that's appealing. Taylor Ward has been really productive. He would be the other guy. 7 home runs, 2 steals, a 129 WRC+, a 231 ISO. moderate at league average-ish kind of strikeouts. Doesn't draw a ton of walks. Was better for drawing walks last year. A lot of premium contact out of Taylor Ward. So a couple of threats up here, but then it thins out pretty quickly. I do think Logan O'Hoppe is a decent power hitter of a catcher. I do think Brandon Drury's better than he's been. Mickey Moniak can get you from time to time. But I like the upside for Turnbull against especially the bottom half of the lineup. I don't think this lineup produces all that much. I don't think they turn the lineup all that much against Turnbull. I like his chances to limit the home run power. You can see even Mike Trout below halfway to the magic number, 4.87 in the home run model. It's a Turnbull spot for me. If I'm stacking Angels, Trout, Odell, Taylor Ward, and then if I want a 5-man it on DraftKings, I probably include O'Hoppe and then one of Drury or Mickey Moniak if this is the version of the lineup that we get. On the Phillies side, going up against Tyler Anderson seems like a soft spot for Phillies bats. Anderson typically works decently deep into ball games. 7 innings 3 times so far this year. A 5-inning start in his last one. A 4 1/3 inning start against Boston. Hasn't gotten lit up. 2 earned runs last time out. An earned run in 7 innings against Cincinnati. At Cincinnati, I'll mention. In the start before that on the 19th. On the 14th, he gave up a season-high 3 earned runs on 4 hits over 4 1/3 at Boston. He hasn't been bad at all. The issue is he doesn't really strike anybody out. He's got a 1.78 ERA, but a 5.09 xFIP. This is the more honest number. So, he's been good, but he is not good. 5.43 ERA with a 5.52 xFIP. Remember when I said that this is the honest number? See? Told you. That's over 141 innings and 25 starts. Just an 18.9% strikeout rate, right around the same. 10.2% walk rate, right around the same. Not terrible for premium contact. Exit velo and hard hits are very low against him. Gives up the occasional home run. Was generating a 12.5% swinging strike rate in this season, but managed only to finish off 18.9% of hitters. Same thing this year, 12.6%, but only finishing off 17.2 in the small sample. I don't think Tyler Anderson is a threatening pitcher, and I think there's a lot of quality in this Phillies lineup. So I'm a lot more firmly on this side, and I don't think the price is right. You could make the argument if he was in the 67, reverse those numbers, make it 6,700 on DraftKings, maybe he hits the SP2 bargain bin then. But at 76, I don't see it. 85, I don't see any reason outside of, again, just, if it was a small slate and we were just bonus hunting, then this would be okay. But all you're getting from Anderson really on the average start is bonus hunting. I don't like it. And I don't really expect the Angels to win this game. And I like the power that we're seeing from Philly. Kyle Schwarber, lefty against this lefty. No concerns over the magic number for power. He's got 7 home runs on the season. Didn't get there for us as the home run pick yesterday, but I like his chances to come right back with one today. Trey Turner, 344, 397, 472 with a 147 WRC plus to start his year. Bryce Harper, 6 home runs, a stolen base, creating runs 23% better than average, a 237 ISO, 11% barrels, 48% hard hits. He is Bryce Harper. He's only 3,500 at first base on FanDuel. Fire away. 5,900 is not incorrect on DraftKings. Could be in the 6,000s easily. Alec Boehm, for his production so far this year on DraftKings, is actually pretty cheap at 4,800. First and third base. Probably a little bit more quality than he's getting credit for from the model. Usually around May 15, a little bit more comes into the model. Maybe I'll do it a little early this year. May 1st being tomorrow. 4,800 for Boehm is a good price. 364, 439, 607 so far this year. A 243 ISO, 4 home runs, a stolen base, a 189 WRC plus. Won the NL Player of the Week just last week. 5,000, 3,100 for JT Realmuto. An effective enough price, especially where catchers are required. He's got 5 home runs, a 184 ISO, 101 WRC plus. He runs a little bit, adds to DFS scoring with stolen bases. Always a dynamite catcher option. Nicky Castellanos, Whit Merrifield, Christian Pache, Johan Rojas at the bottom of the lineup. Mix and match options. Castellanos is the best player in that group. He's been underperforming. Whit Merrifield's a good bat over time, moderate power, a little bit of speed. Usually hits for a better average and on base than he's been so far this season. 3,000, 2,300 with multiple position eligibility. An interesting enough piece. But the priority bats are in the top 5 there. Rojas, not an uninteresting wraparound. 7 stolen bases, Could be effective. Not the best version of the back end of the Phillies lineup, though. Not confirmed yet. We'll see what we actually get. But the Phillies, like, this would be the low end form of the potential Phillies lineup. I think they only would get better from here unless we see like Harper get the day off or Trey Turner get the day off or something like that. So Turnbull is a big yes. Tyler Anderson, pretty big no. I just don't think he's effectively priced for what he is and what he does. Angels bats, you could probably roll some as a contrarian play if Turnbull gets it all popular. But I don't really love it. Like, he doesn't give up a ton of power, so you're taking some of that away. Not the best team for sequencing. They're low priority. I think you can maybe get away with it. I'm sure they'll be low owned. And Phillies bats again, big yes. Yeah, Bohm has been in fuego the last couple weeks. Ricky Lee, two warning track balls for Schwarbs last night. Yeah, I really like that spot. Anthony Taylor, one of these days. I appreciate that, buddy. It helped you. I'm glad to help everybody win. It would be nice, in my opinion, if I could continue to do it for free for the rest of time. Just be here doing my thing, and as it slowly snowball rolling downhill, generates more and more people coming to the site and generating popularity and so on and so forth. There are other ways to make money than charging for subscriptions. So tell your friends, generate some clicks. That's how you can help out. Spread the word. But we'll see where things go again. And Mamba, I appreciate that too. That's how humble Terry is. He has no idea how to accept money. Good stuff. Landon Knack going for the Dodgers. 11 innings, 20.5% strikeout rate so far. Tiny sample, but he's given up a little bit of power. Let's look at the game by game on that one. 6 innings in the last start, gave up a home run, struck out 5, walked 3, 2 earned runs on 3 total hits against the Nationals. The other start was also against the Nationals, a little home and home. In the one out west, the first start, 4 strikeouts, 1 walk, 2 earned, 4 hits to 19 batters over 5 innings. Hasn't necessarily been atrocious, but there's not really all that much to really like. Give up a home run in each of the games. There seems to be a lot of premium contact on deck. Stuff Plus likes the Arsenal in a very, very small sample. Minor leagues, Landon Knack gave us, for one, he's 26 years old and no MLB track record yet to speak of. So that's not a good starting point. In 3 starts so far this year in AAA, pitching as a 26-year-old, he had a 4.02 ERA with a 4.93 xFIP. He had a 27.1% strikeout rate. Last year in AAA, pitching obviously as a 25-year-old over 43 innings and 10 starts, he had a 20.2% strikeout rate with a 9.6% walk rate. Okay runs numbers, 2.93 ERA, but a 5.75 xFIP. AA was right about the same level of production for another 57 and a third, another 12 starts last year. So I don't think we're dealing with a tremendous talent. I like this Diamondbacks lineup. I don't necessarily love the version that has Jake McCarthy in the leadoff spot. Not totally sure that that's what we see in the end. Actually, I am totally sure because that's a confirmed lineup now. Jake McCarthy leading off of the Diamondbacks today. So McCarthy, Lourdes Gurriel, Ketel Marte, Christian Walker, Jock Peterson in the lineup today. I like that. Eugenio Suarez, Gabriel Moreno, Corbin Carroll hitting 8th again. Still priced at $5,100 on DraftKings. FanDuel's got him right down to $3,000. Yeah, good enough lineup. I think you can take shots with the Diamondbacks here. Getting McCarthy at the top spot. He is slashing 300, 338, 383 over his first 66 plate appearances. He's created runs 3% better than average. 0 homers, 2 steals so far this year. In 312 last year, he did steal 26 bases. He only got on at a 318 clip while hitting 243. Created runs 21% worse than average, though. Year before that, 23 steals, was much better with the bat. If we get this guy, that's an effective enough leadoff option. We're only looking at it for one day, at least for right now. This is a little bit more encouraging. I didn't realize he had been at 283, 342 in 2022. 16% better than average. he's definitely got speed. I was thinking, I was going to criticize it just as a like old school leadoff hitter approach, like guy with speed goes in leadoff spot. But given how productive he was that year with the bat and with the ability to get on base, it's kind of interesting. 3,600 is very cheap, helps average down the pricing of the guys that follow. 2,400, same thing on FanDuel. Makes the 4-man here 3,200 apiece with Gurriel, Marte, and Walker in it. If you want to make it the 5-man on DraftKings with Jock Peterson going in as well, it becomes 4,700 a man. That's very cheap for Marte and Walker. It's not bad. Gurriel, 5 home runs. Marte, 5 home runs. Christian Walker, 5 home runs. Everybody above average for run creation. Jock Peterson, over 75 plate appearances, has 2 homers, 291, 446, 491, 200 ISO. Creating runs 66% better than average. Great contact profile. That's the Jock Peterson we know and love. I would stack it this way. I would stack it that way. You could even stack it like that. There's a lot of different directions to take this team. Eugenio Suarez for 4,100, 2,900. He's only got 2 homers, 229, 295, 339 triple slash. He's been 19% worse than average for run creation, striking out aggressively, not walking all that much, not making good premium contact. But last year's numbers obviously were much, much better in terms of putting bat on ball. A tremendous power hitter over the last few years. We're trending toward the further back part of the career. Could certainly be diminished from what he once was, but I expect more power and a little bit more regular power going forward. Gabriel Moreno for 38.26, very cheap for his talent. Hasn't been all that productive yet this year, but a good hitting catcher. Corbin Carroll's been bad this year. 191, 294, 236, 60 WRC plus, 1 home run, 8 steals. 8th game in a row, I think, 7th, 8th game in a row down the lineup since his demotion. How low can we go? Still like the turn. I think the turn is definitely coming. He's just been lost so far this year. Kevin Newman is an afterthought at the bottom of the lineup. The Dodgers facing Jordan Montgomery. Still the projected version of the Dodgers lineup. It's an interesting spot. Montgomery is not ineffectively priced at 8,700. I can see him having a good start. He is a good enough real-life pitcher to get through this team. 6 innings, quality start, maybe a win bonus if the Diamondbacks get there for him. The issue is just how many of these Dodgers is he really going to strike out in this spot? He's not a tremendous strikeout pitcher to begin with. And then if they put a few hits, a few runs on the board, it just diminishes the quality of that 6 innings plus quality start plus potential win bonus if there's no strikeouts to pad that up and he gives up a few runs. You can't expect him to pitch completely clean, but I do expect 6 or 7 innings unless he gets blown up and then all bets are off and it doesn't matter. But first 2 starts of the year at San Francisco and then at St. Louis, struck out just 3 against the Giants, gave up a home run, but only the 1 run, 4 hits over 6 innings. It was encouraging to see 6 in his first start. And then at St. Louis went 7, struck out 4, walked 1, 2 earned runs on 6 hits, 3 total runs, but an effective enough start. It's just those teams are not quite the Dodgers, and these Dodgers really don't strike out that much across most of the lineup. Outside of 2 of their very good power hitters in the middle, we'll see whether Max plays or not. Everybody else doesn't really strike out, and Montgomery doesn't really go get strikeouts. Last year, 21.4% over 188 and 2/3, 21.8% over 178 and a third the year before that. You can see he's a very good pitcher in terms of real baseball, in terms of limiting power. It doesn't scream opportunity to stack the Dodgers. I think they dropped to like 4th or 5th in the stacks board today. So certainly not the spot for the Dodgers like what we were looking at yesterday with what's-his-face on the mound that we talked about. Potentially a little bit of impact this time from Jordan Montgomery against them. It's just, again, on such a deep slate with such a low strikeout opportunity, what are we really hoping for the upside? What's the ceiling for Montgomery compared to the ceiling for some of these other guys way up here against bad teams or against, middle of the road teams with better strikeout options? So I just don't see it, but I could see Monty, holding them down 3-4 runs over 7 innings, something like that. So not a killer spot for Dodgers, but if you're going there, Ohtani's over the magic number at 10.18. Mookie's chasing it at 8.76. Mookie's got 6 on the season. He's also added 8 stolen bases. He's creating runs 114% better than average. Ohtani only 88% better than average. 7 homers, 5 steals, 341, 406, 635 for him. Freddie Freeman, 304, 424, 429. Creating runs just 46% better than average. Will Smith, 363, 404, 539. Creating runs 63% better than average. Teoscar Hernandez has 6 home runs, a 203 ISO, 25% better than average for run creation. Max Muncy, 5 home runs, a 227 ISO, 31% better than average. Muncy does suffer a little bit lefty-lefty, might not play today. They've been given a lot of days off against lefties. I forget whether he was in the starting lineup yesterday or not against a lefty. Would probably be back in if he didn't play yesterday. But we'll see. It would be weird to rest him against the worst of the 2 lefties. Enrique Hernandez, mix and match player at best, but cheap for multi-position. Andy Pajes, definitely interesting. 2 home runs, over 51 plate appearances. Triple slash is right where it needs to be. 234 ISO, creating runs 32% better than average in a small sample so far. Getting everyday opportunities for just 3,300, 2,900. Tremendous power bat through the minor leagues. Like that spot a lot. Miguel Rojas is playable. 279, 354, 488. If he's getting on base like this, that's an interesting enough wraparound back to the top. He's created runs 40% better than average over fewer than 50 plate appearances. Multi-position eligible for cheap. Triple position eligible for 2,300 on FanDuel. It's effective, right? It just makes these 3 guys cheaper. Take him at 23. Now I'm getting Freddie Freeman, Shohei Ohtani, and Mookie Betts for an average price of $36.75 a piece. That's interesting when 2 of them are at 47 and 44. Yeah, it means I'm paying $3,600 for Miguel Rojas, but I like the opportunity to grab these guys for a $3,600 price. I think that's the talking point there if you think about averaging it down. And good flexibility positionally, and not a bad hitter. So one of the better options potentially to do that with. He was not good last year. 236, 290, 322, 69 WRC plus over 423. Hit just 5 home runs, stole just 8 bases. So I don't want to get too excited about the Miguel Rojas opportunity, but low strikeout rates, put the ball in play, do your thing, get on base, maybe steal a bag, create runs, correlate with these guys. That's all we're looking for. For DFS purposes, Montgomery is a tough ask at 8,700. I think he's playable, but I think the ceiling is really low. There's a lot of better options on the board. He is a pitcher I like, and we will use him in other spots, just not the right spot. Landon Knack is not really on the board. 7,500, 7,400. Doesn't look good. Diamondbacks bats for sure. Dodgers bats definitely playable, but a little lower end than they normally are. Pirates, A's. Mitch Keller taking the mound for the Pirates. Mitch is off to another weird Mitch start. Stuff plus is right around league average so far. He's given up a lot of hard hits, a lot of exit velo, just 2.56% home runs. It's been a home run in each of his last 3 starts. 1 in the 3 starts before that. He's given up exactly 4 runs in each of his last 2. Gave up exactly 4 runs in 4 out of the 6 starts so far this year. 5.14 ERA with a 4.09 xFIP. Just a 20.5% strikeout rate. That's where you've run into problems. Last year, he had a 4.21 ERA, 3.70 xFIP. We're not all that far off of that, but we've dipped a lot so far for strikeouts, 25.5 down to 20.5. The swinging is right about the same. The CSW is right about the same, just not finishing hitters off so far this year. When Mitch comes with question marks, we get a little bit worried, but at 88, 9,000 against the Athletics, if he was on form, this would be a higher price. So I think it's baked into the pricing. I think he's very playable against the A's here. Low-end team. Targetable team, 27% strikeout rate for the projected version of the lineup. Targets like Lawrence Butler, Brent Rooker, Seth Brown, Ryan Noda, even tons and tons of strikeouts here. Last year, the guys that were in the show, 27.5% strikeout rate for that group of players. So, tons of strikeouts. There is a little bit of a threat for power, certainly. If you get a bad Mitch day, it could turn into a mess pretty quickly. He hasn't gotten blown up yet this year, but again, he's given up exactly 4 runs in 4 of the 6 games. Those were against Miami, Washington, Boston, and Milwaukee. So 2 bad teams, 2 good teams. Strikeout high was 9 against Detroit in a 6-inning start. Pitching pretty deep into games. He came out in the 5th in the last, or after 5 in the last start. Pitched at least in the 6th inning in every other start, completed the 6th inning in each of the 3 starts before that 5-inning start in the most recent one. There's good, there's bad. It's Mitch Keller. That's usually what we're dealing with. Do think he's very playable. Projects out great against Oakland here. If there was ever a scenario where he was unpopular for some reason or like not crazy popular for these numbers, I would like him more. I just think people know enough to use Mitch Keller to target the A's here. On the other side, Alex Wood, 6,200, 6,700, 18.8% strikeouts so far, a 6.59 ERA, a 5.13 xFIP. Terrible in terms of premium contact, hasn't really resulted in too many home runs, but he's given up a home run in each of his last 4 outings, all starts. One against the Yanks, against Cleveland, against the Nationals, against the Rangers. Limited strikeout option. He had a 7 strikeout game over 5 innings against Boston back on April 2nd. Every other start after that, 2, 4, 4, 5, just kind of mid-level, a little below league average in terms of strikeouts. And then fair amount of walks, a really ugly whip at 1.98 in the small sample. Last year, that was 1.43. The runs numbers were right around the same. The strikeout rate is around the same. The walks are exactly the same. The premium contact wasn't as bad. I don't think there's any real justification for playing Alex Wood other than I want to target a Pirates team that is like decidedly middle of the road with a total bargain bin option. Like I said, when we were looking at the pitchers, it's not good, but it is cheap. I prefer Nick Martinez for 200 more, I think, but he's in a worse matchup going against the Padres. I greatly prefer an $1,100 more expensive John Gray and Cole Ragans at 78. So you do have, I think I would just use these guys, like the effective upper mids as my value guys. I don't think Alex Wood really delivers on 6,200, but I like him better than Soroka, Carrasco, Alexander, Anderson, and Criswell. It's the best I can do. I would stack, especially if rostering any Alex Wood on DraftKings. By the way, that's not on the table on FanDuel at 6,700. There's no reason to go there. It's just a price play on DraftKings. And it's not a play, right? It's just a price option on DraftKings. I want to clarify these things. I would target him, especially if I am rostering that option at 6,200 on DraftKings. Hedge that play because it's probably not going to work. Brian Hayes, Brian Reynolds, Andrew McCutchen, Connor Joe, all effective hitters against lefties. 282, 367, 369 with a 111 WRC plus so far for Hayes. Reynolds checking in with 4 home runs, 2 stolen bases, creating runs 14% better than average. McCutchen still driving the ball effectively. 14.6% barrels, 43.8% hard hits. He's striking out a lot more this year so far, not drawing as many walks, but this is a little bit of happenstance still. It's only 88 plate appearances. I don't think he's going to become like a 280 hitter all of a sudden and go back to getting on base. Well, he might go back to getting on base in the 340, 350 kind of range. But I am interested in the way he's putting the bat on the ball so far. He's got 3 home runs, a stolen base, and 88 WRC plus. If he's in the lineup, he's playable. Connor Joe for 43, 31. Definitely a decent start to his year. 282, 365, 447. I like the way that these 3 hitters are getting on base. It's just the quality diminishes down lineup a little bit. You do have O'Neill Cruz in here. All his talent, 3 home runs, 3 steals, just a 79 WRC plus, really needs to get the engine turned over. Jared Triolo, a better hitter than this in terms of the hit tool, but not a great option. Edward Olivares, a better overall player probably than this. 99 WRC plus, does have 3 home runs in 66 plate appearances. Last year, Olivares, 12 home runs in just 385, created runs 5% better than average in the small sample, also stole 11 bases. So he'd be an interesting bat, but it's really a pretty hard cut, like right there, plus O'Neill Cruz. And actually Mikey Taylor's in here. Taylor hasn't really done anything yet this year. We're just going on a little bit of faith and love with Michael Taylor if we play him. 2,700, 2,900. He's very effectively priced. This is where we always found him in the lineup, hitting 8th or 9th throughout last year and previous seasons when we've gone to him. If you've missed previous shows, last year in 388 plate appearances, he hit his 21 home runs and stole 13 bases as a somewhat reliable, cheap, under-owned DFS option. The year before, in 456, he only hit 9 home runs, stole 4 bases, created runs 10% worse than average. So, I mean, it's a give and take with Michael A. Taylor, but he's been off to a okay start with the bat, and I think there is lurking power there for very, very cheap if you're building a bunch of Pirates stacks against Alex Wood. Henry Davis off to a terrible start, over 79 plate appearances, but there is talent, there is prospect pedigree there. If you're rostering A's against Mitch Keller, I think we want to focus on some of the higher end lefties, like Ryan Noda, Seth Brown, and JJ Bleday, maybe. Meh. Yeah, not a ton of justification for Bleday. Really, Ryan Noda or Seth Brown should be hitting in that spot, and JJ Bleday should be like down here. Shea Langoliers should probably be there. It's a weird version of the lineup. Do we have an actual lineup for this team yet? We don't. So Rooker in the heart of the lineup has 5 home runs, but slashing 212, 288, 485, 273 ISO is great. Creating runs 24% better than average. Doing Brent Rooker things. 42.5% strikeout rate is atrocious. Not walking quite enough to help support that, but has hit enough, made just enough contact, and when he does make contact, he crushes the ball. No arguments at all with his ability to drive the ball when he makes contact. It's just the infrequency with which he makes contact that becomes the problem, and why I don't think much of him is a hitter, and why he tends to crater over extended samples. Seth Brown, 10% barrels, 42% hard hits, was very good for premium contact last year and the year before. Just 200, 256, 313, but is a better hitter than this overall. So he'd be a target. Lawrence Butler at 2,300 in the leadoff spot. Let's just roll with Estuary Ruiz every day, even with a righty on the mound. What does it matter? Tyler Nevin is off to a decent start. Creating runs 36% better than average. Third base and outfield eligible on DraftKings. First for cheap on FanDuel. Abraham Toro at 31.26. He's got 2 homers and a steal, a little bit of power, a little bit of speed, but an inconsistent bat at best. Noda, I've mentioned a number of times, was a productive player last year, got on base at a great clip last year. It's evaporated so far this year in 92 plate appearances, but that's got him priced down at 28-22 as a lefty bat with a little bit of pop. He's not uninteresting if you're stacking this team. 16 home runs and a 364 on base created runs, 23% better than average in 495 plate appearances last year. So Noda's kind of interesting. Shea Langoliers, we all know that he hits for infrequent power. 6 home runs in 97 plate appearances, 230 ISO, but just a 76 WRC plus, a 172 average. Striking out just 21.6% of the time. It's just a different problem than what Brent Rooker has, but they both absolutely murder the ball when they manage to make contact. Langoliers could hit up here and would be more interesting if he does. And actually should probably hit up there. Downer and I is kind of an afterthought at the bottom of the lineup. So Mitch Keller is a yes. It is an enthusiastic yes, or a firm yes. Let's not say enthusiastic. Let's say firm, because I don't love Mitch. A lot of issues with Mitch over the years, but he's a firm yes in this spot, and I think there's bonus strikeout upside for him. Athletics bats, especially as a hedge, not uninteresting. Very, very cheap, playable. Not a priority. Pirates bats, a little bit better than the Athletics bats, a little bit higher priority, but also really not an overwhelming priority by any means. Not a great ballpark to roster hitters in either. The Reds, the Padres, and then I think just one game after that, and then we're done. Larry C saying Keller's not getting the movement this year on his pitches. His velo's close to last year, but the movement is off. Definitely something to look into. I haven't really looked at the profile. I've been slow to get into it. A lot of times, that's why some pitching projections are a little bit lower than once we get to later in May and June, and I don't dabble with the innings projections and just let it fly fully. You'll see a little bit higher, especially on the high side, guys projecting a little bit more into the 40s with FanDuel scoring. But with what I was saying there is since it's so early, I haven't really taken a look yet. A lot of times those things still need to work out. Guys need to build up arm strength after the spring. Spring training for pitchers especially is very, very short. So we see that a lot through April, either diminished movement, diminished velo, a little bit of wonkiness. So I like to give it a little bit more time before I really, really dig in on what's going on with specific pitchers, because I just don't want to bias my opinion too much and then think that's the case, not go back and check it and be talking about it or be worried about it going forward when it's maybe not a thing. But good note though, Larry. That's important to note and something that I'll remember to look up. So Cincinnati Reds going up against Yu Darvish, who is just coming back off the IL. Darvish hasn't really been great this year. 4.18 ERA, a 4.33 xFIP, walking too many at 9.9%. He's given up a lot of hard hits and exit velo. 50% hard hits, 92.7 miles an hour of exit velo. That's uncharacteristic. It's just amounted to a 1.98% home run rate, but it is on a fly ball trajectory, that 18.3 degree average launch angle. So he's avoided a few barrels. He's gotten a little bit lucky, I think, to have only given up a limited number of home runs in his starts. Over time, excellent pitcher. Really like him a lot, but so far this year, it hasn't been great. The strikeout peak was 7 against the Giants in a 5-inning start. He also hasn't really been pitching for much depth. He did go 7 against the Cardinals, but everybody's been beating the Cardinals this year. 6 strikeouts. He actually gave up 3 earned runs and a homer in that one. Other than that, 3 2/3 in his first start, 5 innings against the Giants, 3 innings against the Cubs, gave up 4 earned, struck out 4, but walked 3. 5 innings in the start against the Dodgers his last time out, struck out 2, walked 2, gave up 3 earned on 4 hits. That was back on the 14th, and he hasn't pitched since. So he already wasn't pitching for depth, and now I don't know what the return from IL depth looks like. It's just a neck, but you think about pitching, your neck is getting whipped around in there, maybe, it's probably bothersome. Maybe that's why he wasn't pitching well. Maybe he comes out and back to full health and dominates this Reds team. There are plenty of strikeouts available for him. He's got that going for him. But at 86, 84, I don't know that the short start is necessarily priced in. I could see the upside, but I don't think we need to chase it here. Not necessarily running out into the streets to roster Reds either against him, because I do have a healthy respect for you, Darvish. But I think they're playable, and I think they're probably the more playable side of the equation in the Reds or Yu Darvish head-to-head. Mid-range power, nobody up toward the magic number, but a lot of guys above halfway to it. Basically, the entire top 7 is at least halfway to the magic number. So you can see that equaling some production. Some pretty good on-base percentages out of these guys. Some very good run creation marks. Ton of speed, so you get a little bit of stolen base upside. You get a superstar in Ellie for 6,000, 4,400, third base and shortstop on FanDuel, shortstop only on DraftKings. 18.8% barrels, 50% hard hits, 8 homers, 18 stolen bases, and getting on at a 390 clip. He's been outrageous so far this year. Will Benson has not been good, 212, 291, 444, but up to league average for run creation, 232 ISO, 4 homers, 5 steals. As long as the counting stats are there, I'm fine with it. Spencer Steer is effectively priced at 54, 40, 34. 3 homers, 7 stolen bases, creating runs 24% better than average. Jake Fraley, 5 steals on the season, a 116 WRC+, an effective enough hitter with a little bit more power than he's flashed so far this year. India, don't love 4,100, 2,700, a little bit of a weak spot in the lineup so far this season. We've seen him be more productive, particularly for DFS output, but just kind of a middle-of-the-road type hitter. Nick Martini, a little bit of power output in the first game of the season, and not much since. 3 home runs, 206, 230, 382, 60 WRC+. Jeremy Candelario, 69 WRC+. Santiago Espinal and Luke Maley, 41 and 56. Gets a little bit weak down toward the bottom end of the Reds lineup, so if this is the version of the lineup that we get, I don't necessarily love it. Encarnacion Strand a little banged up, so probably not going to see him today. Top end is where I'd be looking. It's really about that top 4, and that's where it's going to be popular if anybody rosters this team, so kind of avoidable. Not a great opportunity. And again, Darvish good enough that he could come out and just completely blow them away over 6 innings. Nick Martinez, 16.8% strikeout rate over 23 innings in 3 starts. Last time out, it's 3 starts and 2 bulk relief appearances. Last time out was a full start. He went 6 innings. He gave up 5 earned, struck out just 3, walked 0, gave up a home run, 11 hits in the 6 innings. That was against Philly. I'm willing to forgive that a little bit. Against the Angels, he lasted only 3 innings, but that was a bulk relief appearance, so that's fine. Faced 11 hitters, got a hold. 2 hits, 2 strikeouts, no walks, no runs. A bulk relief appearance the game before that against the high strikeout, low-end Mariners, 4 innings. Gave up 1 earned, 3 hits, struck out 3, walked 0. Full start against the Mets, struck out 6, gave up 5 earned, 8 hits in 5 innings. So it seems to be that he's a little bit better in bulk relief than he is in these full starts. Padres could certainly get him here, but at 64 is maybe just enough. Stuff Plus likes him a little bit at 106. That's a little bit above average. He hasn't been bad for home run power against. 10.8% swinging strike rate. He's only walked 2%. He really doesn't walk many hitters. 2 walks all season in 23 innings. It's very, very good. It's just the strikeout to walk rate is not great because his strikeouts are only 16.8%. But if we're hunting around for bargain bin options, I think he's on that list. He's a little bit better, I think, than Alex Wood, even in a worse matchup. It's very, very close between those two. And again, this is just DraftKings bargain bin exclusively. There's no reason to play him at 7,100 on FanDuel. And it's really, really thin on DraftKings too. Again, it's an option. It's not really a play in my mind. Padres bats against him. Fernando Tatis at 9.49, a little bit underpriced, 5,300, 3,700. He's only at 236, 317, 431, but a 195 ISO. He's created run 16% better than average, 6 homers, 3 steals, and we know he's much, much better than that, and the evidence is right there in his contact profile so far. 13.4% barrels, 54.6% hard hits. That's an uptick in the small sample over last year. Striking out just 19.4% of the time versus 22% last year, walking a little bit more. He's going to be perfectly fine. Jurickson Profar continues to succeed. He's got the leadoff spot now in this projected lineup. He's interesting in that spot. He's cheap enough. Can't argue with it. I mean, the production's been there. It's justifiable if you're clicking this team together if he's in the leadoff spot. If he's sitting down here, is a lot more skippable still. Jake Cronenworth's been productive, 4,200, 2,900, 4 home runs. Manny Machado's got 4 home runs as well. 101 WRC plus for Manny, 128 for Jake Cronenworth. Xander Bogaerts up to 216, 285, 288, 72 WRC plus, 2 homers, 2 steals. Very slow start for the season for Bogey, but still playable. 4,500 at second base, 2,800 still has shortstop eligibility on FanDuel. Jackson Merrill also has shortstop eligibility on the FanDuel slate. I'm not sure if he's ever actually played there in his major league career. Outfield only on DraftKings at 3,800, 2,600 on the FanDuel slate. 292, 349, 375. Creating runs 10% better than average in the start to his career. Ha-Sung Kim over 133. 4 homers, 7 steals, a 105 WRC plus. He's been fine, but not as productive as he was last year so far. Totally like him to come around. I don't have any issues with rolling him out at an underprice, especially with triple position eligibility on FanDuel. Very interesting over there. Campusano, Graham Pauley, playable from the bottom of the lineup. Campusano, an interesting catcher. 2 home runs, creating runs 14% better than average. 287, 316, 426. If we ever get him like up in one of these spots, it'd be a little bit interesting. So Darvish is kind of a no just on lack of innings or an expectation of a lack of innings. Certainly enough talent and enough strikeout upside, though, that I could see him succeeding. I just don't really think we're getting much more than 5. I question whether we get more than 5 innings. Nick Martinez, only in the value bin on DraftKings and really not that great. Reds bats, I think you can get there mostly with the top end of this projected version of the lineup. But Darvish is very, very good when he's on form and could easily find some strikeouts, even if he only goes 5. And then Pods bats against Nick Martinez a little bit higher end between the two teams. And somebody just dropped something outside or somebody just got shot. A little bit higher end between these two teams. And they're effectively underpriced across the board. There's a lot of good players in this lineup that are a little bit cheap. Last game up, we did it, gang. We've almost done it. 2 really good pitchers. One of the lowest end run totals on the board. The lowest. 7 runs. Tied for the lowest run total on the board. By the way, there's a little bit of weather in the Mets game, but right now it looks perfectly fine outside. It's supposed to be coming later on and maybe impact the end of the game. Ronaldo starting off at 9,500 on DraftKings. That's a great price for how good he's been. 10.8 is not necessarily incorrect. It's just high for how he stacks up against everybody else on this slate. He's down here. This is a great projection and is not far off any of these other guys. It's just for 10.8 versus Peralta at 10.4, Logan Webb at 10.2, all these other guys in the 9s. That price doesn't really fly for me, but he's got tremendous, tremendous upside. He's facing a Mariners projected lineup that has a 28.5% strikeout rate. We saw a version of this lineup yesterday that had a 30% strikeout rate. They have not been good at all this season. Average WRC plus for this version, 95. 5% below average. Average on base, just 301. Average, just 220. Josh Rojas in the leadoff spot, 3,400, 2,700. He's cheap. He's been one of their more effective hitters, believe it or not. 308, 375, 523, a 215 ISO, 3 homers and a steal, a 162 WRC plus. He is demonstrably not that player over time. He was okay this year. 23 steals, a 108 WRC plus, 9 homers, a 122 ISO. This year was not that good. So a little bit unbelievable from Josh Rojas to start, but maybe we get some stolen base and some carryover on base going forward. Julio has been coming around a little bit, let's say. 265, 308, 319, just 1 homer, 7 steals, just a .053 ISO. We're up to a 46% hard hit rate, 6.6% barrels. That's a big dip from last year in the small sample, but a lot of reason to believe that he'll come around. Striking out too much, not walking all that much, but there's plenty of upside there any given slate. Cal Raleigh, Mitch Haniger, they're two best players so far this year, 121 and 102 WRC+, with apologies to Josh Rojas. 6 home runs so far for Raleigh. Haniger at 4 home runs, a 165 WRC+, 214 for Cal Raleigh. Jorge Polanco's been pretty bad, 3 home runs, struggling at everything else so far as a hitter. Ty France, 2 home runs, scuffling along, and a player that is really here for his hit tool. So a disappointing 242, 300 on the front end of that. It's only 100 plate appearances. I expect he'll end up hitting, in the 265, 340 kind of a range if he has a good year. But disappointing so far. 50.7% hard hits is good, though. Maybe a little bit of sneaky appeal if you choose to target Ronaldo for some reason. Mitch Garver, Luke Raley, Dylan Moore, a lot of strikeouts down the bottom of the lineup. Not all that much quality. Garver's got 3 home runs, but a 150, 266, 313 over 94 plate appearances. Been pretty rough for the Seattle Mariners. So again, I could definitely see some strikeout upside going Lopez's way. He's got a 26.1% strikeout rate over the first 4 starts, 25 innings of the season. Just a .072 ERA, or 0.72 ERA. But the 3.69 xFIP, that's the real number. Giving up a 43.3% hard hit rate, 89.6 miles an hour of exit velo on a fly ball trajectory. Just managing to avoid barrels a little bit at 3.3%. He's avoided home runs, but you can see a little bit under, a little bit below average for stuff plus across the entire arsenal. A few too many walks, but just managing a .88 whip. I would imagine that the BABIP against is very, very low. He's gone at least 6 in every start so far this year. Exactly 6 in the first 3 starts. Had a quality start in every start so far this year. Last time out, faced Miami, went 7 innings, struck out 6, walked 2, gave up a home run, 1 earned, 3 hits. Start before that, struck out 7 against the Astros, which is an accomplishment in and of itself. 1 walk, 4 hits, no runs. No runs on 3 hits, 6 strikeouts, 3 walks against the Mets over 6 innings. And then the lowly White Sox, but when they were a little bit better with Lubob in the lineup. 6 innings, gave up 1 earned, struck out 5, walked 2. So just 1 home run allowed. Only 2 earned runs allowed in 4 starts. He's been tremendous, but there are maybe some subtle indicators under the surface that it's not quite as good as it's been. He could absolutely continue this success, though. I am not by any means saying that he's not interesting today. 9,500, I think he's actually a little bit cheap on DraftKings. 10.8, I think he's a little bit expensive on FanDuel. Luis Castillo, 28.8% strikeout rate, 4.8% walk rate, 4.15 ERA, but I don't care that much about that because the xFIP is at 2.95, 12.5% swinging strike rate. He's given up a little bit of premium contact, couple of home runs in there, 2 homers in his last game. That was at Texas, little forgivable. Give up 1 homer to the Cubs, and then the first 2 starts of the year weren't great. Little bit mixed quality over the first 3 outings. Gave up exactly 4 earned runs in each of them. Struck out 5, 7, and 6 against the Red Sox, Cleveland, and Toronto. But was a little bit gettable for hits and run scoring in those games. Last 3 games has given up 4 earned runs total in the 3 games combined. Struck out 9 against the Cubs, 9 at Colorado. Gave up just 2 hits, no earned runs, 9 strikeouts, 1 walk over 7 innings at Coors Field. Pretty impressive start. And then in that game against the Rangers, he gave up the 2 home runs, but those are the only 2 earned runs he allowed. He only allowed 4 hits, struck out 6, walked 2. Is there like a fucking gunfight going on outside? What is going on out there? Hopefully somebody's just building something out of wood outside my house. A lot of like loud, sharp banging. Anyway, so I think Castillo's just kind of rounded into form. Like I said, early April especially. A lot of guys just need a little bit more stretching out, a little bit more build-up. We're up to 34 2/3 innings and a very solid strikeout rate. He's doing his thing in terms of the low walk rate. This Mariners pitching staff has been absurdly good over the last 15, 20 games, whatever it's been. And it continued last night with Bryce Miller putting up a dominant start against this Braves team. Luis Castillo could come out and do the exact same thing. He's only 8,600. That is an underprice. It's a dramatic underprice on DraftKings. 9,700 on FanDuel is probably too low. He should probably be more like the 10-2 that they're asking for Logan Webb. So again, just like 78-86 for Raggins and Castillo, 83-86 for Webb and Castillo. Keller, even if you wanted to put him into that mix. John Gray at just 7,300 combines with Castillo. Great. Castillo's one weak point for this start is he is pitching against the Atlanta Braves. So as I was saying at the top, you still do get strong projections for the Braves because of the Braves. They're some of the best hitters in all of baseball. Everybody's below the magic number for home runs, but some of these guys are close enough to it. I wouldn't run out to stack Braves, but they project out fine. I do think they make for a stackable team. And if they're under-owned compared to where they are, that always makes for an opportunity. Right? If we want to go to this team every day, basically, we might as well take our shots against good pitchers when they're going to be lower owned than they should be. Their quality is not that diminished by the fact that Castillo is a great pitcher. They're a great baseball team. 127 plate appearances for Acuna, 13 steals, a 110 WRC plus. Greatly diminished from last year's first 127 plate appearances, but he'll be fine. No worries. Ozzie Albies, 2 home runs, 2 steals, one of the best second basemen in baseball, 3,954. A little bit of a dip in price for the missed games when he was injured. Austin Riley, Matt Olson, a little bit down in price, 34.38 on FanDuel, 55.56 on DraftKings. 5 combined home runs. They will have something approaching 80 combined home runs before the season's over. 9 homers so far for Ozuna, 330, 405, 650 triple slash. He's been outrageous. Absolutely playable. Prices are correcting, 57.43 across sites. Orlando Arcia, still cheap, 4,200, 2,900. Very productive. 2 home runs, 287, 315, 436, 7% better than average for run creation. Michael Harris, 5,000, 3,400. Highly, highly playable. Home run power, stolen base ability, run creation, hits for average, gets on base. Great contact. Nothing not to like. Travis d'Arnaud's cheap catcher power if he's in the lineup. 284, 364, 612 so far. 5 home runs over 77 plate appearances. A track record of hitting for power as a backup catcher. Hit for power when he was a starting catcher. If it's Chadwick Trump, I like it a lot less. I'm looking for d'Arnaud there. Jared Kelenic still looking for his first home run. A little bit of revenge in his heart here against the Mariners. 306, 368, 371. If he's in the lineup, he's playable. He wraps around to the top to make everything cheaper. Don't know how much Mariners I'm playing against Ronaldo, but if I am, it's probably like, 1, 2, 3. Maybe it's just a 3-man. Maybe it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then pick your poison between Polanco, France, and Garver. But it's not great. It's not one to get carried away with. They've just been bad. A lot of underperformance, a ton of strikeouts, a lot of potential zeros going up against a pitcher who's been pitching as effectively as Lopez has. Even though we don't necessarily fully buy it, given some of the under the covers indicators, I think he's been good enough to warn us off from stacking too many Mariners against him. So they're like just a loose throw in a couple maybe if you're building 150 kind of a play. I think you can get more aggressive than that with the Braves, especially if it's contrarian. If they're under-owned, I think you can take some shots. It's just it's a much lesser of an opportunity than the Braves normally would be. The opportunity there comes from them being potentially low-owned. Castillo is a big yes. Lopez is a big yes. And that's it. Holy hell, 5:35. Actually finished quicker than I thought we would. I thought we were going through 6 o'clock. Larry's got Keller on 2 dynasty teams. That's why he was looking at Savant. Looking at some StatCast stuff on Mitch Keller. Yeah, it's a very interesting point. If the movement is diminished, that takes a lot off of his strikeout upside. That's probably where that 5% went. Castillo 32% owned on DK. Yeah, that's another good way to look at that scenario. Actually, not only would Atlanta be under owned for their quality overall, but they would also a lot of text messages. You could also potentially benefit from targeting him just being so highly owned. You're just doing that against one of the best pitchers in baseball. That's where the problem comes in, but at least you're doing it not with, the A's or the Nationals. Like if you can take that position with the Braves, I do think that's always worth doing at least a few times. It's just a matter of how aggressive you get about it and knowing what you're buying, right? You're still paying a high price to face Luis Castillo. So there's give and take there. But that's one of the better opportunities that you get to roster these guys when they're low owned, facing a highly owned pitcher. You just need it to deliver once in 10 times that you play it. Then you're probably making money. So let's breeze through this one more time on the pitching board. Starting from the bottom. Criswell, Anderson, Alexander, Carrasco, Soroka are all pretty big no's. I don't think we get there with any of those guys, even at value, even at price. Alex Wood is the first guy going from the bottom up that I would consider for the bargain bin on DraftKings. I don't think he's playable at 67 on FanDuel. At 62, it's thin, but he's going up against a Pirates lineup that is decidedly mediocre at best. There's a little tiny sliver of possibility there. Landon Knack, I don't think is in play against the Diamondbacks, just where he's priced. Nick Martinez is a little bit interesting for 6,400 against the Padres, only on DraftKings again. 71 on FanDuel, I don't see it. I don't think there's a need to go there. Mackenzie Gore, just a bad matchup against the Rangers. Talented pitcher, but you don't need to tangle with the Rangers with this many pitching options. There's just going to be better performances on deck today, most likely. And he's not super cheap. Hunter Brown, bad spot against the Guardians with all the contact and the ability to draw some walks or just put the ball in play against him. I just don't really see him succeeding at 68. There is talent there, but they're extremely difficult to strike out. It just doesn't line up for a good spot for him. I think we will get Hunter Brown back at some point. There's too much talent there for him to not be good all season, but it just doesn't look like the right spot, even in the bargain bin at 68. Woods Richardson, 7,000 is kind of interesting. Going up against the low-end White Sox team, a little bit of talent there. 7,000 I think is right on DraftKings. 83 is probably, makes him like the first potentially playable guy on FanDuel if we're going from the bottom up here. I just don't love it because, we need that quality start and we've got so many better options for it and so many guys priced, somewhat similarly or better. Darvish, I just question the innings. I don't know if we get 6 innings. We'll probably get 5. And I think he's got the potential to go 6-7. He does pitch deep into games when he's fully healthy. It's just first start back off the IL after 2 weeks off. I'm not sure what the depth is going to look like. Jordan Montgomery, just facing the Dodgers, makes him a little bit more limited. Good pitcher, could put up at 25 to 30 points on the FanDuel scale, kind of a start. 13 to 18, I guess that is on the DraftKings scale. It's just, or 13 probably to like 16 and a half, 17. It's just, there's not a ton of ceiling there. There's not a ton of strikeouts. He's not a great strikeout pitcher. The Dodgers are extremely difficult to strike out. And then you get the downside of the Dodgers shortening the start by scoring a ton and putting some negative on him. But I do think overall that's probably the most likely outcome is 6 relatively clean innings, 3-4 runs from Montgomery, a decent start, but a low-end DFS start. Javier Assad, 884 and 8,800. I think he's very interesting against the Mets. He's been pitching really, really well. Got some questions about how he's making it happen, but no questions with the results so far, and I think the price hasn't really gone up to match the performance. Manaea, a little bit playable, 7,600. The price is right on FanDuel, but questions about the ability to book the quality start just in terms of how short he usually pitches. And then the Cubbies, I do have a healthy respect for their on-base skills, their sequencing. 76, 8,000. I think Manaea is playable, but not great. Jose Barrios is just overpriced on FanDuel. 10,000 is too much going up against a decent enough Royals team. I think he could succeed. I just think he's a slightly above league average pitcher that spikes upside games from time to time. 8,900 on DraftKings, he's a lot more effective. John Gray at 78, 73. I love the value potential there against Washington. Good potential to throw 6 innings, book the quality start, find a bunch of strikeouts. He's been pitching really, really well. Even with their low strikeout nature for some of those hitters, I like John Gray's upside. And I think the price is just absolutely great. Well aligned for a discount. That was clunky. I think he's really cheap. Ronaldo, a little bit expensive, but a great matchup going up against Seattle with all those strikeouts on board, and he's been pitching really, really, really well. 9,500 on DraftKings is a little bit cheap. It is, again, a little bit results-oriented. It's another one I'm not entirely sure how he's making it work, but he's making it work, and it's a great spot against the struggling Mariners lineup with a ton of strikeouts. Love Turnbull against the Angels here, 9,500, 9,100, pitching great. Potentially the last shot to get him for a while, so we'll take our shares. Castillo, it's just the Braves potentially holding him down, but the price is right at 97.86. He's discounted on DraftKings for the matchup, so you get a nice little bonus just for him being cheap. I love the fact that you have Raggins, Webb, and Castillo, and also Turnbull at 91. All inexpensive options. You could throw Keller against Oakland into that as well at 88. A lot of inexpensive, good pitchers from that upper mid-range on the DraftKings slate. Logan Webb at 83. He's literally one of the best pitchers in baseball. The strikeouts are a little bit down this year, but he's got the potential to find him in it. His potential to throw 7-8 innings and just keep that Boston team in check is extreme for 8,300. Raggins at 78 is way too cheap. Even with Toronto's limited strikeouts, he is more than talented enough for strikeouts to find a strikeout upside against him. So that's a very, very good price at 78. 92 on FanDuel, totally playable. 9,000 for Keller on FanDuel is totally playable. So is 10-2 for Webb. So is 97 for Castillo. A lot of quality at the top of the board. And then there's just Freddie Peralta facing the Rays, who have been underperforming all year. He's very expensive, but his upside is pretty outrageous. So it might just be a day where Freddie at the highest price on DraftKings, second highest price somehow on FanDuel, goes out and just dominates the day. There's a fair chance that even with all this quality, even with all these great options, that Freddie makes you regret not rostering him if you undercut Freddie. He's very, very good. If we're looking at home runs, oops. Mr. Buxton at the top of the board. I didn't make him the home run pick of the day. I wanted to go to the Brewers side of that, just with Rhys Hoskins. That one just caught my eye at the start of the day with Contreras, Adames, and Rhys Hoskins all above the magic number, and then Gary Sanchez down here at 9.63. Just a tight little group for power from Milwaukee. Again, it's a bottom half of the lineup, especially, that is under projected in terms of how it stacks up against all these other top stacks. But for the power upside, for like a cheap 3-man, cheap 4-man, I think it's kind of interesting with Milwaukee. So Rhys Hoskins was the home run pick of the day. Only a handful of guys above the magic number. It's 11 above. We've got a lot of guys between 8.5. So you can add another 22 guys to the close enough kind of a list. And there's a lot of recognizable names like Ronnie Acuna, Fernando Tatis, Marcus Semien, Kyle Tucker, Sal Perez. A lot of good home run hitters in that group too. But a couple of the Milwaukee guys above the line. From the Twins, we got Buxton up there. We've also got Correa right there. Jeffers right there. Kirilloff right there. And Kepler. So I like the power upside from the Twins. I like the power upside from the Brewers. Gotta love the Astros. I'm sure they're going to be crazy popular, but it's a killer spot against Carrasco. Jordan Alvarez showing a ton of power. Several of the other Astros bats showing some power. Kyle Schwarber, easy enough to see a home run traveling over the wall tonight. Corey Seager, good chance for him to break out of his struggles today. Solid mark in the power model. And then Patty Wisdom. I'm going to hit it one more time. If he's in the lineup, I'm sure it's out by now. Let's see. Patrick Wisdom is hitting second for the Cubs today. 2,500 on FanDuel, and whatever his price was on DraftKings. That's just a monster spot. For a one-off, I really like that. 10.32 in the home run model. He's 2,500 at first or third on FanDuel, 3,600 at third or outfield on DraftKings. It's only 11 plate appearances this year. I don't worry about this year's numbers. Last year, 23 home runs in just 302 plate appearances, 295 ISO. Tremendous contact, 19.5% barrels, 54.7% hard hits. We get him against Sean Manaea, a gettable lefty. That's an interesting Patrick Wisdom spot. Manaea could also strike him out 3 times, but he's very cheap. Anyway, guys, got some lineups to update. I got some basketball projections to knock out. Buxton's not in the lineup. Son of a bitch. That sucks. Gonna have to rethink my stack there then. Twins lineup: Kirilloff, Edward Julian, Jeffers, Kepler, Correa, Larnach, Santana, Castro, and Farmer, both at the bottom of the lineup. Love the flexibility of both Castro and Farmer, but losing Buxton out of that kind of sucks. Anyway, thank you, Monty Pritchett. Thank the rest of you guys. I appreciate you guys. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe. Jump into the Discord. Been going for 2 hours and 40 and change minutes here. It's been a lot of fun. You guys absolutely rock. Good luck out there tonight. Updates coming on the site very shortly once I get the lineups in. NBA projections coming on the site in the next 30 minutes or so. Somebody go out there and go win something tonight. I'll see you tomorrow.